One thing I will say, and I think I have some audio about this, the president is less optimistic. Fred, isn't that your takeaway? He was with Maria Bartiromo over the weekend, and he was asked specifically about the 4th of July because, the whole thing was the Senate has to get it back to the House has to get it to the president's desk. They want to do it by Friday. The president wants to do it by Friday because it's the 4th of July. We're kicking off here. We're going to get into the 250th anniversary of this country next year, so he feels that that's very important. But the numbers are very questionable right now, and I don't know if they can do it. I don't know if they can do it, overall, let alone get it to the House and, get it across the finish line, because this thing only passed by, what was it in the House, Fred? Do you remember? Was it 2 votes or 1 vote?
Yeah, I think it was 2.
It was barely. So you have Senator Hawley out there, and I don't know how this is going to play, because it didn't sound very good when I pulled it from the audio here a long time ago, or a short time ago. So one of the concerns that Senator Hawley has, we addressed this on the roundtable on Friday, is that there is a big implication for Medicaid in Missouri. And we get money from the federal government here in Missouri, these rural hospitals, there's jobs on the line, there's healthcare on the line. So Senator Hawley, from the very beginning of this, he took a very strong stand and said, look, and he started running ads. And there's no doubt that some of this is about re-election and there's politics involved, but he seems to indicate that he does not like the changes to Medicaid. Now, what Jason Smith will tell you, and others, they'll say, look, what we're doing here is we're putting work requirements on. We're just making sure that the people who really should get Medicaid coverage do get the Medicaid coverage. But the hit to the Missouri budget, and I saw one estimate this morning, is like maybe just for fiscal year 2026, $200 million. So then you got to come up with money from elsewhere, because we have to balance our budget in Missouri. We don't have an option. We have a balanced budget amendment, so they have to balance the budget. Well, they have to get money from, somewhere to pay for Medicaid, or to at least make up for the cuts. Now, there's a chart that's in the New York Times. This is interesting too. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick, because they go through, how much this costs and where the cost savings are and all these things. So they have a chart, right? And they say savings. Savings would, I guess, be considered where they're cutting. They say Medicaid, green energy and the environment, student loans, food benefits, other health care, and then it says natural resources. And by the way, I don't care if you're a reporter at the New York Times or if you're a United States senator, nobody knows exactly what all this is about right now. Senator Kennedy pretty much admitted that last week. He said, there are things that he discovered in the bill that he didn't like very much. So I don't know even what that is, because he didn't get specific. So then in the chart, they say costs. And this is where you get kind of in Washington speak. Tax cut extensions. That's like, look at, you guys can see the chart. I can hold it up to the video. See the line on that? It goes off the page, right? Well, tax cut extensions are just making sure that the government doesn't confiscate the money that they were confiscating before 2017, because Trump gave everyone a tax cut, right? So part of the goal here is to make sure that this thing gets to his desk, so everybody gets the tax cut that they got in 2017. There's no new tax cuts that they're doing. Maybe there are in some areas, because again, it's kind of hard to grapple with right here. But you have a lot of people taking a stand here. This is what Senator Hawley said. Let's see if this audio plays or not, because it didn't sound very good. He sounds like he's going to vote yes on the bill, but he's also expressing concern about the Medicaid costs.
I mean, we can't be cutting healthcare for working people and for poor people in order to constantly give special tax treatment to corporations and other entities.
Okay, that's a little hard. He said basically we can't keep doing this. My state's going to be fine, just to paraphrase what he said, but he's worried about the future. One of the tricks that they're using right now, and I think I have some audio we'll get to here maybe in a few minutes from Jason Smith. You've heard of the SALT deduction. That's the state and local tax deduction, where that becomes a bigger issue, where, you have members of Congress in New York and California that have districts that have a fair amount of wealthy people, and, just people that make more money than I don't even know what the cost of living adjustment would be. Let's say you're making $150,000 in Missouri. What's that worth in New York City? Right. So they're trying to get the number to a certain figure that's amenable to all the members. So what Jason says, and he's the House Ways and Means Committee chair, he's been the guy that's been shepherding this. He's a Missouri congressman. Is, well, we're not changing the numbers, but we're moving it from 10 years to 5 years. So then all that means is we're going to have this argument again in 5 years, because That's how they fudge the numbers. Okay, we don't like $40,000. Well, we're going to do, the same $40,000. We're not going to, change that, but we're going to change it from 10 years to 5 years. I don't even know if the tax cuts that they're doing, the Trump tax cuts, are permanent or not, because that was one of the things that the president insisted upon, and we should all insist upon, the tax cuts be permanent. The reason that we're voting on this again is because when they passed, they were not permanent. So there's a lot going on right now in Washington. No better person to explain it all than Josh Kraushaar, 97.1 FM Talk political insider. He's coming up next. I got a lot of audio. We'll keep you updated on all this. We have Sue's News for a Monday afternoon, even though the weekend went fast. It's all coming up. My story about a near flood in my house. You guys will like this one. That's coming up at 4:04.
Traffic from the 97.1 FM Talk Traffic Center.
We've got a couple of accidents along westbound 44. One is at Lewis Road, and they've moved that off to the right shoulder. But there's another one westbound 44 just before Six Flags, and that one has been blocking the two left lanes, and it still is. I'm talking fire trucks, the whole 9 yards. So only one right lane is getting by, and traffic is kind of merged into one giant jam that goes back through 141. Now, 64 isn't bad westbound, but eastbound there was an accident approaching Tower Grove. That in the left lanes, maybe a little bit better through there. They may have cleared that. And out west, 64 westbound really jams at Lake St. Louis Boulevard, headed for an accident that's headed for the 70 split. And that is causing a jam almost back through Highway N. If you're headed into Illinois, a little bit of volume downtown, but not on the bridge itself. This report brought to you by Jerry Kelly Heating and Air Conditioning. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's traffic on 97.1 FM Talk.
So I had one of those moments today on the road. I was on 44 westbound to Eureka, Sue, and there were big signs that said left lane closed, right? So I was not in the left lane. I'm in the middle lane.
Oh, no.
And then there's trucks that are in the left lane, like MoDOT trucks are in the left lane. And I'm just about to where one of those MoDOT trucks is. But I'm in the center lane, so I'm fine. Someone comes zipping around me, and it was, if I didn't hit the brakes, I don't know what would have happened. But they don't pay attention to the signs, and they either almost ran right into the MoDOT truck or right into me.
That is scary.
It was very scary.
The Martins came over, we were having spaghetti when we suddenly noticed that we started getting sweaty. So we grabbed the keys and we ate it in the van. That's what my friend said, call Jerry Kelly, man, JerryKelly.com. Give him a call, even though it's late, JerryKelly.com.
Hey, we had a great conversation on Friday evening. In fact, you can't use the rewind function because we are beyond the 24-hour window, which is really a great function on the Odyssey app. If you go on the Odyssey app and you try to rewind something, for example, the beginning of the show, which was a complete mess, you want to tell your friends, hey, listen to the start of the Mark Reardon show because it was a disaster today. But Susan L. Ward was on the show on Friday. We were bragging about her new office. We were talking about the Bezos wedding and prenups. And I think she even said, so you remember what the figure, I said, what is the number of people like in St. Louis that she deals with that have a prenup? And I think that the number was like 1%.
Yeah, it's really low.
But that doesn't mean that people have easy situations with high asset divorces. And whether you're in the high asset, range or you're in the low asset range, doesn't matter. You need great representation. And that's what Susan and her firm represents. Now, they do have a spectacular new office, which is at 270 in Manchester and Des Peres. They're very proud of that. They deal with every area of family law, including, domestic violence, all kinds of issues related to kids, custody, child support, grandparent visitation. Sometimes these things get very, very ugly. I even asked one of the questions, I said, well, what percentage goes to trial? And I think the number was like 5%. And my assumption was in that conversation was that means it's all the wealthy people. And she said, no, it's just sometimes people are not willing to, be flexible and they want to fight for their parental rights. And I completely get that, having gone through this myself. But if you need to get a hold of Susan, here's the way to do it. 314-783-9400, the website, stlfamilylaw.com. The focus on family law, the emphasis on you.
Hi, this is Steve Butts with the Crawford Butts Insurance Agency. I know we're all experiencing sticker shock when you get your insurance premium. Now more than ever, you need an independent insurance agent to find the best value for your family's insurance needs. Crawford Butts, family owned and operated for more than 60 years. please give us a call at 314-752-2500 or at crawfordbutts.com.
Major League Baseball realized they needed new rules to help grow and speed up the game. Your retirement strategy may also need updating to keep up with potential tax law changes, Social Security, or whatever curveball Uncle Sam throws your way. Call Ricken Financial for an initial no-cost portfolio x-ray. 314-207-6211. That's 314-207-6211 or online at rickenfinancial.com. Investment advisory products and services made available through Impact Partnership Wealth, LLC, IPW, registered investment advisor.
Since 1995, Renewal by Andersen has been helping St. Louis homeowners upgrade with windows and doors built to last. And now we're celebrating in a big way. It's our 30th anniversary window and door sale, and you can take $19.95 off every project. No gimmicks, no games, just real savings from a name you've trusted for decades. Our exclusive Fibrex material is 200% stronger than vinyl and backed by the nation's best warranty. Drafty windows, dated doors, want to boost curb appeal? This is your moment to make the upgrade. But hurry, this offer ends June 30th and some restrictions apply. Visit rbastl.com to learn more or schedule your free inspection today. It's fast, it's easy. Just dial pound 250 on your phone and say the keyword Windows. That's pound 250, keyword Windows. Or head to rbastl.com. Renewal by Andersen. Superior products, exceptional service.
The White House and the president are adamant that this bill is passed and that this bill makes its way to his desk. Republicans need to stay tough and unified during the home stretch, and we are counting on them to get the job done.
So that is Carolyn earlier today. Jason Smith was on last night. He, of course, is the chair of the very powerful House Ways and Means Committee. He was on Trey Gowdy's show on Fox talking about the changes that the Senate's, I guess, still making.
If you look at the changes that the Senate has already made, out of the 103 different tax provisions within the bill, 85% of them are either identical or just technical changes because of the parliamentarian and the Byrd rule of what the House passed. So that is very helpful when we move this bill, once they pass in the United States Senate, to bring it back over to the House to hopefully send it to the president's desk. And I think we'll do that before July 4th.
Okay, I think that's ambitious. In the meantime, as I said, Elon is calling the Republicans the Porky Pig Party this afternoon. Josh Kraushaar is with us this afternoon, 97.1 FM Talk political insider, editor-in-chief of the Jewish Insider. Sorry, the pig sound effects were distracting me. You've probably never been introduced on this show with pig sound effects, so there's a little history. Josh, how are you this afternoon?
Good afternoon, Mark. Yeah, I don't think I've ever had the glory of the sound effects in any context.
Well,
so I feel honored today.
Shame on me. All right. Is there even a way at this point for even someone like you to encapsulate what the hell is going on in the United States Senate and what's going to happen this week? Because there's a lot going on at the same time, isn't there?
Well, we already had a lot of drama over the weekend because the first initial vote to kind of get the ball rolling in the Senate side towards the big, beautiful bill led to the retirement and the defection of a very prominent Republican senator, Tom Tillis, who was very critical about the cuts, as he argued, to Medicaid that could come as a result of the legislation. So we're already starting to see, it's interesting. The two Republican senators who voted against in that initial vote were two people on the opposite sides of the Republican spectrum. Yeah. Rand Paul was upset about sort of the spending levels, and Tom Tillis was upset that it cuts too much. So they're actually essentially arguing the opposite side of the same issue. Look, the big. I mean, this is a big, beautiful bill, but sometimes we don't talk about all the details that are actually in this bill. I mean, the main thing it's going to do is going to solidify and make permanent the 2017 Trump tax cuts from his first term. But it also has to be paid for, and that's where all these cuts come into play. Cuts to Medicaid, cuts to clean energy, student loan relief. There's a lot of devil in the details, and that's why the Republican vote is getting a little tricky as we get closer to the finish line.
So what is the process right now, though? You mentioned the two senators who voted against some of it over the weekend, but Josh Hawley, who's been even taking out TV commercials here across Missouri, talking about not cutting, help to rural hospitals, et cetera. I played a piece of audio, it wasn't very good quality, but the basic bottom line was, well, we got to do something about this. We're never solving this problem, but my state's going to be okay with the changes that they've made. So he's trying to have it seemingly both ways right now.
Yeah, it's tough because you do have someone like a Hawley and there are a handful of other Republicans that have fashioned themselves into something of Republican populist, and there is a concern about Missouri has a lot of Medicaid recipients that depend on the programs and are going to be affected by the cuts if they do end up passing. So the Trump Republican Party has become more of a working class, more of a populist party, but this is a very conventionally conservative bill, and it has a lot of tax cuts, and it's a lot of businesses like it, and a lot of individuals who are middle to upper middle class are going to be thankful for the tax breaks, but there's also a lot of entitlement cuts that are going to come as a result, and other people are going to be feeling the pinch. So, there's no such thing, economics 101, there's no such thing as a free meal. There's no such thing as a bill that's going to make everyone happy, and to balance the budget, to kind of make the math work in this bill, there were a lot of cuts and extra trims that needed to be made.
So sometimes I can't help myself and I have to tune into CNN, and I did that earlier today. And I heard somebody say that in effect, after this bill, that President Trump is a lame duck president because, look, this is one of the reasons they're trying to do this now is because they know that the clock is ticking. It may seem very unusual to people listening right now to say, wait a second, we're like 18 months away from the midterm elections. But the midterm elections are on a lot of people's minds because of this bill, right?
Yeah, look, any big there's the beautiful part, there's the big part. It's great that it's beautiful, but any voter is going to be a little wary when something is super big. I mean, remember the healthcare, Obamacare, and Nancy Pelosi, I believe, said you have to kind of pass it to see what's in it. The bigger of the bill is, it's actually kind of unconservative to kind of mash everything in one huge bill, and I think that's where the political backlash could end up happening. People don't know what they're trusting Trump.
Right.
This is the big, beautiful bill. But what does it mean? I think there's actually a risk. I've talked to a lot of people who love the branding of calling it that, but then they think about it and they don't even know what they're supporting, what they're voting for. Right. And I think there's border security. And look, there are a lot of things that the Trump administration could be touting, I think, a little more effectively. A lot of border security money as part of this package. You're not hearing that being talked about as explicitly from the White House. A lot of tax cuts becoming permanent. That's not what's being talked about when you just call it big and beautiful. So I think there could be a buyer's remorse if you keep just saying it's big and you don't even realize what you're passing, and then there's some uncomfortable realities that come about. That's where the politics get tricky.
Well, and that's what I think, look, Senator Kennedy, I always love to play him. He's a wordsmith. He even said last week there were things that he discovered in this bill that he did not like very much. I had a listener that hit me on the X, formerly Twitter, this weekend saying, look, there is still funding in the current level, and I don't even know where this is going to land for some of these, gender sex operations that the Republicans oppose. So there's a lot of things, if this thing does pass, that people are going to have to swallow their pride on or their principles on because they want to get it across the finish line. Now, when it comes to that, here's what the president told Marita Bartiromo, because I think the timetable is really tough here.
It's very important. If we don't have it, there's a 68% tax increase. We're cutting 1.7. Let's see, we're cutting, 1.7 trillion. Think of it. I think I just saw the number a little while ago, $1.7 trillion. But we can grow our country so much more than that. And what I want to do is do it through growth. We're going to have growth like we've never seen before.
Now, Josh, in that interview, he seemed to be a little more open-minded or flexible on whether or not this is going to happen by Friday. I don't. Now, I'm always a glass half, empty type of guy. I don't see how they get this thing to his desk on Friday. They're trying in the Senate to do all these votes. There's wrangling. There's, behind the door meetings, all this stuff. But this is a tight timetable, and the numbers just aren't there.
Yeah, it's going to be a tight. I mean, look, I'm not as worried. I mean, the Senate, you're seeing all these delaying tactics, mainly by the Democrats, Votorama, and the Regent Schumer had the bill being read out loud, which is, I think is a good thing to actually. You can't have any buyer's remorse if you actually hear what's in the bill. So good for the Democrats. But I think the House is where it gets. When it goes back to the House after Senate passage, and I do think it's going to get passed in the Senate. The margins are narrower, and it's a different bill, and I think that's you alluded to it at the top of the show. Mark, but this is exactly where I think that the margins are going to get tricky. The SALT deductions, a lot of the stuff that was already a tough pill for the House Republicans to swallow, going to come right back all over again. And it's going to take Trump's lobbying and pressure to really get this thing through the finish line.
So I criticize the legacy media quite often for not doing their job. I don't think they did a very good job when Joe Biden was president. I think we're learning that. We've learned that quite a bit. But on this the situation with, and I know you've written about Mamdani, this guy who just won the Democrat primary. I have to give a little credit to Kristen Welker over at Meet the Press, because she pressed him on this issue yesterday, and she did it 3 times.
Quickly, for the people who care about the language and who feel really concerned by that phrase, why not just condemn it?
My concern is to start to walk down the line of language and making clear what language I believe is permissible or impermissible takes me into a place similar to that of the president, who is looking to do those very kinds of things, putting people in jail for writing an op-ed, putting them in jail for protesting. Ultimately, it's not language that I use. It's language I understand there are concerns about. And what I will do is showcase my vision for the city through my words and my actions.
Okay, well, there's a lot of weaving there, because I don't know who's trying to put anyone in jail for an op-ed, but you are the editor-in-chief of the Jewish Insider. You wrote about this guy. It is frightening. And I think a lot of the listeners, and I've been exposed to this anti-Semitism level in the past 18 months that has just been stunning to me. And here's a guy who's the Free Palestine, candidate in New York City that just won the New York City Democrat primary.
Yeah, it's remarkable that in the city with the largest Jewish population outside of Israel, you can have someone who's essentially openly calling for, or I shouldn't say calling for, he's endorsing or not criticizing a slogan that basically calls for the death globally of Jews. It's remarkable. And look, it's not the only extreme position he holds. I've never seen someone run on this far left of a platform in a city that, even though it's very heavily Democratic, it's New York City is not a leftist city. It has a lot of working class voters that are much more moderate. Staten Island is quite Republican. This is not a city that endorses Mamdaniism, at least. And I think it's important to remember that the primary of a small subset of voters doesn't necessarily reflect the entire electorate. And that's what you're hearing, by the way, from everyone from Chuck Schumer to Hakeem Jeffries to the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul. They're not endorsing this guy.
No, that's right.
And that's what's going to get really interesting, because they're going to have to make a decision come soon on whether they're going to get behind him. Otherwise, you do have Eric Adams, who's also a Democrat, who's on the ballot as an independent, and he's the incumbent mayor. I think, the notion that Mamdani has got this race in the bag is far, far premature, and it's going to be up for people like Chuck Schumer, who claims he's a protector, a shomer, as he says, of the Jewish people. We'll see. If he endorses Mamdani, I think there's going to be a lot of outrage.
So
certainly among Jewish voters.
On that front, because I was sampling CNN, I heard someone. No, this was on Fox. I heard someone on Fox today say, "Look, 1 in 5 Jewish voters, supported Mamdani here." So what does that even tell you? Obviously, the working class, the populist message is going to play well, especially in not only the biggest city in the country, but one of the most expensive cities, if not the most expensive. People want someone that's going to give them relief, even though they might not be able to deliver that relief. But how can Jewish people vote for this guy?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think if it was a head-to-head race, it would be like 80 to 20, right? I mean, so there was a lot of different candidates, but you have a leftist Jewish vote that's about 15 to 20% of New York City, Park Slope, Brooklyn. But if you look at the district by district or precinct by precinct data, it's pretty clear that you had 70 to 80% of Jewish voters that probably would never vote for Mamdani. So I think it was a little confusing, because he has this hardcore leftist bloc, but everyone else would never touch him with a 10-foot pole. Look, I think it's not. But I think the issue is that we'll see this in the general election. He was quoted a few years ago saying the end goal in his view as a state assemblyman was seizing the means of production. He said that in an interview in 2021. He said on Meet the Press just yesterday that he doesn't think we should have billionaires. He wants to ban billionaires. Look, some of that's populist, but some of that is just so far beyond what we're used to in normal politics.
Yeah, I wonder if he has an iPhone, because if he has an iPhone, he wouldn't have that iPhone if it wasn't for billionaires. And that's just, the start of the list. Josh Kraushaar, good luck with everything. Thank you so much. By the way, have you noticed my Cardinals are 9 games above 500?
Yeah, don't rub it in. We're going the other direction.
All right.
But we'll see.
All right, we'll see you, dude. Thank you.
Traffic from the 97.1 FM Talk Traffic Center.
We've still got some volume out there on westbound 44. There was an earlier accident at Lewis Road, and things are still unwinding, still pretty slow at 141. Well, there's an accident then near Six Flags Road, and that's been blocking the 2 left lanes and heavy traffic behind that as well. Now, we also have a jam. There was an accident on westbound 6440 out near Prospect. That has created a parking lot jam that goes back through N. And other than that, it's not bad. We've got road work causing delays, northbound 170 headed for 70. They've had the left lane down. And now some moderate volume headed for and crossing the Poplar Street Bridge if you're headed into Illinois. This report brought to you by Lakeside Renovation and Design. For over 25 years, they've been St. Louis's trusted choice for transforming homes inside and out. From windows and siding to kitchens, baths, and outdoor spaces, they deliver quality craftsmanship backed by lifetime warranties. Visit lakesiderd.com to start your dream project today. I'm Sue Thomas. That's Traffic 97.1 FM Talk.
Let me guide you into an awesome car buying experience or car selling experience with my friends at Master Cars Inc. Alex and Gary Rosenberger. They are friends. I've gotten to know them over the last decade. They do great work in Granite City. It's used cars, but new car caliber. And no matter what you might see on the website, you're going to see lots of fun cars, classic cars, Corvettes. They specialize in those. They have your everyday vehicle as well. And if you're looking for like the 2020 Subaru WRX Premium up there right now, they have a Ford Edge from 2021. They have trucks like a GMC Sierra from 2015. If you don't see what you're looking for in particular, that doesn't matter. You get with these guys, you tell them exactly what you're looking for. You can say it this way: hey, I heard this guy, Mark Reardon, on the radio talking about you guys. Can you find me this vehicle with some miles on it, whether it's 2,000 miles or 5,000 miles or 10,000 miles or 20,000 miles? Maybe you're looking at a car and you're looking at the new price and you're like, wait a second, because I drive it off the lot, then it's worth even less. That's why you trust Master Cars Inc. And trust is an important word here because they have such a passion for what they do. I promise you they're going to take great care of you. They're not going to put you in something that they would not be proud to drive or to sell to a customer. That's the way they do business. Master Cars Inc. in Granite City. Tell them that I sent you along. MasterCarsInc.com.
Is your home, business, or church looking tired, chalky, or in need of curb appeal? Go Rhino. Tired of painting year after year? Go Rhino. Our unique 3M ceramic technology is perfect for brick, stucco, aluminum, steel, color lock, masonite, and more. It's backed by our 25-year transferable warranty to not chip, crack, or peel. Great if you're staying, and even better if you're selling. Our ceramic coating allows you to maintain all of your architectural features. The decision to do vinyl will leave your home looking like a plastic moldy box. With Rhino Shield, in 15 years, your home will still have that, wow, it looks like you just got it painted. We've done large condo complexes, parking garages, pole barns, and commercial strip malls. We coat sloped and flat roofs to extend their lives too. Evaluations are free. 877-25-RHINO or 877-25rhino.com. See what we did there? Genius. Tell them, ladies.
Don't paint, don't vinyl, go Rhino Shield. Never paint your house again. Rhino Shield.
It's time for a $98 AC tune-up.
And this portion of the show is sponsored by our friends at Jerry Kelly Heating and Air.
For details and a list of all station contest rules, visit www.971talk.com/rules. You're listening to The Mark Reardon Show on 97.1 FM Talk.
There's a really, really funny Truth Social post that Trump just put up there on AT&T that I will share here in a few minutes. It just happened, and it's rather comical, and I think a lot of people would agree. You know, I said last week, and I feel very strongly about this, and I told my daughter this last night, I cannot wait for school to start again because it's so crazy in the summer. I know I speak for a lot of parents out there, but I want to focus on, you know, I'm half joking. I'm not joking completely because it is crazy, but education is so important. One of the reasons that I spent so much time earlier this year, couple of months ago, on David Zweig's book, An Abundance of Caution, is because his book got overlooked in the whole Jake Tapper, Alex Thompson scenario. And his book, David's book, is on the learning loss for the kids and how the lies were told to all of us, and we kept these kids out of school. One of the best voices for this in the country is Sarah Parshall Perry, who's with us this afternoon. She's the Vice President, Legal Fellow with the groups Defending Education. Sarah, how are you this afternoon? Welcome back. Happy to have you.
Mark, always love doing your show. Thanks for having me.
You have been highlighting some nonsense. This stuff kind of gets overshadowed, I think, which is why I mentioned David's book, because of the news cycle. Because look, 10 days ago, we were bombing Iran. We're barely even talking about that right now. But there's so many issues related to education. I don't think anyone can argue that kids in the last 5 years overall in this country have moved forward when it comes to learning. We've seen things moving backward. And you still have, and this is one of the things that you've been doing, the teachers union out there highlighting some of the nonsense from the teachers union, which seemingly still happens on a regular basis.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. On a regular basis. In fact, we now know, obviously, after the departure of Randy Weingarten from the Democratic National Committee, that was really reinforcement of the fact that this is not a learning institution. This is about political symbiosis. In fact, the DNC and the unions are so inextricably intertwined that Becky Pringle, who is the president of the other biggest teachers union in the country, the NEA, also has an ongoing role as an at-large DNC member. And that just cements the fact that this is not about teaching kids. In fact, their most recent leadership summit is going to focus explicitly on things like social justice, racial justice, and strengthening, quote, public education through joyous rebellion. Well, that, to my mind, doesn't sound like increasing learning outcomes at all, but that's truly just the tip of the iceberg.
So that's what caught my attention. You tweeted this out earlier. This is your daily reminder that teachers unions are more concerned with virtue signaling than political activism than teaching your children. And you put the poster up for the Conference on Racial and Social Justice, Promote, Protect, Strengthen Public Education, a Joyous Rebellion. This is in Portland. It probably will not be a surprise to people that it's in Portland, Oregon, which is coming up. I guess it's going on even right now. So it's June 29th through July 1st, 2025. But your point is, and you kind of made it here a moment ago, where is the NEA? Where is the AFT? The conference dedicated to everything that has happened to these kids since COVID and continues to put them behind, because they seemingly did not get the message on DEI that I think was sent, at least in part, during last election in the fall. And they keep going back to the virtue signaling, which is just stunning to me.
Well, and the No Kings protest, as you know, Mark, was actually led by the teachers' unions with Randy Weingarten at the helm. So this has more to do with political advocacy. These are more like political agitprops than they are actually educators. In fact, the most recent leadership competency summit. So this is how you train teachers' unions members. Have specific classes, seminars. Here's an example. Pedagogies of change. That will look at various pedagogies impacting social and emotional environments and classrooms and how they can greater societal transformation achieve. This is a huge reminder that they're actually trying to change the culture. Here's another one. How educators can lead in the fight for, wait for it, climate and environmental justice for all. How we can make sure that students are not being threatened by their health, well-being, future, and it's particularly, quote, devastating for communities of color. Students lead. Here's another one. Addressing race and equity from the bottom up. What does a student voice look like, and how can we better sort of reach minorities, individuals of color, or BIPOC? Listen, these are not seminars designed to get our kids' National Association of Education Placement rankings higher, which are right now hovering at 27% and 30% respectively for math and English. They don't seem to care. It is all about partnership with the DNC, transforming society, and making sure that they can capture young minds to then convert them to DNC members and Democratic voters in the future.
Absolutely. Now, you know what's frustrating here, and I'm bound to have listeners this afternoon, whenever, especially because we're not in school and the teachers are out. Whenever I talk about something like this, I hear from teachers, and I hear from teachers who are just as outraged as you are and as I am, and they feel like they can't do anything about it. I think they feel a little helpless because their unions and the union leadership always focus on this. Now, I'm not going to say that that's not the case in the city of St. Louis, because we've seen examples of these. You know, we had a superintendent here. I don't know if you and I have talked about this. She turned a $17 million surplus into a $32 million deficit in the period of about 12 months. And a lot of it was hiring people from out in Portland, Oregon, and places. I think she was in Washington State, obviously, or not obviously, but not Portland. But look, they were focusing on spending money to go to conferences like that. That's one of the reasons they ran up the tab so much, because they sent a group of people to these conferences that focused on DEI nonsense and not actually teaching the kids.
Yeah, again, not surprising. And in fact, here it's very interesting. I'm encouraged to hear that there are teachers who are really sort of opposed to what's going on in the teachers' unions and to the political stance that they've taken. And they've sacrificed the nature of learning and rigorous academic standards and pedagogical development so that these kids become critical thinkers. But unfortunately, the unions are more concerned about teaching them what to think than how to think. And that really should be the method in public education. Listen, it was very interesting to me. We saw a huge case related to public education from the Supreme Court just on Friday. So the ink is barely dry on a very compelling opinion from Justice Samuel Alito. Sotomayor dissented, but this is the Mahmoud versus Taylor case where a set of religious parents simply wanted to opt their children out, 4, 5, 6-year-olds, from LGBTQ themed curriculum. And the school stonewalled multiple times, even though it let opt out for other particular areas. I had a teacher weigh in on my live tweeting saying, I'm going to teach your kids whatever I want, and there's nothing you can do about it. So here's the flip side of the coin, right? We're hearing from good teachers, but we're also hearing from teachers who are 100% committed to changing an individual's mind, which is exactly what the curriculum in Mahmoud was designed to do.
You know what was ironic about that Supreme Court decision, and I covered this briefly on Friday. There was a great op-ed from Andrew Sullivan, who's a gay man, and he's not a conservative. And he actually made the point in the New York Times on Friday, this is before the decision, he wrote it before the decision came out, that the alphabet mafia, he's not talking about regular gay men or lesbian women, they've gone too far with some of this stuff. And I wonder how many people maybe paid attention to that. By the way, I just retweeted your piece. You wrote a piece that's called American Students Are Dumber Than Ever, Thanks to Equity. I just put that on my Twitter site at Mark Reardon KFTK. Sarah Parshall Perry, you keep up the fight because it's important. And I always like to kind of recognize that these are issues that sometimes, fall through the cracks, especially during the summer, and they're very important. So thank you for coming on and highlighting, and thank you for tweeting about all this stuff too.
Thanks so much, Mark.
All right, take care. Have a great summer.
Traffic from the 97.1 FM Talk Traffic Center.
I'll tell you what, we had a quiet morning. This should be technically a quiet week as far as traffic goes.
Yeah, you just jinxed it.
And I totally did, because northbound 170, a little slow at 70. It's mainly due to road work. But there was an earlier accident on westbound 6440. And this thing was out at Prospect, and it was blocking the left lane. Well, they've moved that off to the right shoulder, but things are still unwinding out there. And it's also, there's a little bit of volume on either side of Clarkson. And 44 is improved, but you can find a slow pocket really anywhere from Bowles out almost to 109 due to a couple of earlier accidents. Headed into Illinois, the approach to the Poplar Street Bridge is fine, but there is some moderate volume headed for Route 3. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's traffic on 97.1 FM Talk.
Brought to you by Amazon.
This Prime Day, July 8th through the 11th, you can get a great deal on a new foot spa, transforming you into the queen of kicking it.
Wait, this has bubble jets. Okay.
Shop great deals this Prime Day, July 8th through the 11th.
I want to guide you into the Retirement Advisor Group, and their website is really a great starting point, especially if you want to learn a little bit more about what Thomas Helbig and his nephew, Bob Kershaw, Bob's wife, Tammy. It is a family-run and operated group over there at the Retirement Advisor Group, what they're all about, how they're different than some of the other retirement experts, even in this area. And Thomas will tell you that the secret is safely linking to the market. Look, the market was up today. We know it's had wide swings. We probably had a bit of a correction, but you don't want to trust your retirement savings to everything tied up in the same place. Most people have no idea where the 401k money's going, right? You need to educate yourself. They can help you do that. We do events 5 times a year with the team. We have more scheduled a little later this summer, so we'll keep you posted on that. But it doesn't matter because you can register right now online for a one-on-one meeting. what would it hurt if you have questions about your retirement, where your money is being invested, how maybe you can make some improvements on that, whether you're long away from retirement age, whether you're in retirement or maybe on the cusp of retirement. You can schedule a meeting very easily, 314-993-9494. The website is retirementkey.com for the official financial planners of this show, Thomas Helbig and the Retirement Advisory Group.
Hey, it's Matt, your leaf filter trusted pro. Gutters are an often neglected part of the home. They're also one of the most important. Clogged, overflowing gutters can cause serious problems like foundation damage or basement flooding, which can cost thousands of dollars to fix. Let's face it, cleaning gutters yourself is not only a hassle, it can be dangerous. But when you get Leaf Filter, you'll never have to worry about cleaning clogged gutters again. Get started today by visiting leaffilter.com/radio to schedule your free inspection. If you decide to move forward, we'll professionally clean, realign, and seal your gutters before installing our patented stainless steel micro mesh system. Leaf Filter keeps out everything but the water. And it's backed by a lifetime transferable no clogs warranty. So you're protected for good. We're in your neighborhood and ready to help. Visit Leaf Filter today for a free inspection and estimate, and you could save up to 30%. Visit leaffilter.com/radio. That's leaffilter.com/radio.
Eggland's Best. The only eggs with more fresh and delicious taste, plus superior nutrition. Available in so many delicious varieties. Classic, cage-free, organic, free-range, and pasture-raised. Eggland's Best. Better taste, better nutrition, better eggs.
The Mark Cox Morning Show.
Hey, it's Kim in for Mark. If you live in Illinois or you pass through there, prepare to pay more at the gas pump starting Tuesday. At 8:20, the Illinois Policy Institute on the impact this will have on drivers.
The Mark Cox Morning Show, weekdays from 5 to 9. You're listening to The Mark Reardon Show on 97.1 FM Talk.
So you don't have AT&T, do you?
Well, you mean a phone?
Yeah, as your
I have it
like
for
as your
my
phone
internet,
service. Oh,
but
you have it
no,
for your internet.
Consumer cellular. is what I
So,
have.
oh, that's right. Trump, and I thought this just happened, but it happened a while ago. He was on the phone. He had a conference call with American faith leaders today, and he's ripping on AT&T because he says, I'm doing a major conference call with faith leaders from all over the country, and AT&T is totally unable to make their equipment work properly. This is the second time it's happened. If the boss of AT&T, whoever that might be, could get involved, it would be good. There are tens of thousands of people on the line. And I guess AT&T responds on X, because Trump does that on Truth Social. They say they had reached out to the White House and they were working to understand and assess the situation. He didn't really get, specific with what the issue is, but I would say this. I wonder if he can maybe get on something with Spectrum and do the same thing and tell Spectrum that their service sucks, because that would help me in a variety of situations.
Presidential assistance.
Yeah,
yes.
no, I think I do. All right, so let me give credit where credit is due here on this Maldani guy and what's happening in New York City, because he's on the Sunday morning shows. He's on with Kristen Welker at Meet the Press. She's the current host of Meet the Press, and he has called for, I mean, some of the things in this guy's past are just crazy. They really are. And one of them is a global intifada, which is certainly a call for terrorism, even though he apparently claims he doesn't look at it that way. He's calling for violence. He's pro-Palestinian. It's one thing to be pro-Palestinian and support the people of Palestine and say, look, we're looking for solutions for food or for water, for whatever the case may be. And by the way, has anyone noticed that the bombs have stopped dropping between Israel and Iran? And I don't know what the situation with Hamas is, but we haven't heard a lot of that. So Kristen Welker doesn't only do this one time. She goes to bat 3 times on this issue. What I would say in advance of playing this audio, wouldn't it be nice if the host of Meet the Press or some of these other legacy outlets would do the same thing with political candidates? And by the way, I'm fine with doing it on both sides. The problem is they usually do it on just one side, but here she goes, where she makes the first attempt.
You were recently asked about the term globalize the intifada, if it makes you uncomfortable. In that moment, you did not condemn the phrase. Now, just so folks understand, it's a phrase that many people hear as a call to violence against Jews. There's been a lot of attention on this issue. So I want to give you an opportunity to respond here and now. Do you condemn that phrase, globalize the intifada?
That's not language that I use. The language that I use and the language that I will continue to use to lead this city is that which speaks clearly to my intent, which is an intent grounded in a belief in universal human rights. And ultimately, that's what is the foundation of so much of my politics, the belief that freedom and justice and safety are things that, to have meaning, have to be applied to all people, and that includes Israelis and Palestinians alike.
So he is a very, very slick speaker, right?
Yep.
I think we even had Paul Morrow point that out last week. So he can put his words together pretty well. He sounds like a politician because he is a politician. By the way, did you know this guy has a trust fund baby? So
Are you
won,
kidding
yeah,
me?
of course. So he's got a very wealthy family. He has, benefited from that. He doesn't like capitalism. But back to Krista Welker, she says, "Okay, wait a second. Let me rephrase that again here."
But do you actually condemn it? I think that's the question and the outstanding issue that a number of people, both of the Jewish faith and beyond, have. Do you condemn that phase, globalize the Intifada, which a lot of people hear as a call to violence against Jews?
I've heard from many Jewish New Yorkers who have shared their concerns with me, especially in light of the horrific attacks that we saw in Washington, D.C. and in Boulder, Colorado, about this moment of anti-Semitism in our country and in our city. And I've heard those fears and I've had those conversations, and ultimately they are part and parcel of why in my campaign I've put forward a commitment to increase funding for anti-hate crime programming by 800%. I don't believe that the role of the mayor is to police speech.
Okay, well, anti-hate crime, when he's the guy that's kind of behind some of the hate crimes. So I played this one earlier with Josh. He tries one more time here.
Quickly, for the people who care about the language and who feel really concerned by that phrase, why not just condemn it?
My concern is to start to walk down the line of language and making clear what language I believe is permissible or impermissible takes me into a place similar to that of the president, who is looking to do those very kinds of things, putting people in jail for writing an op-ed, putting them in jail for protesting. Ultimately, it's not language that I use. It's language I understand there are concerns about. And what I will do is showcase my vision for the city through my words and my actions.
You can kind of hear him spinning there when he's trying to put the words together, because he simply makes things up about President Trump. Let's not forget, it was actually the New York Times that would refuse to put Tom Cotton's piece on the editorial page because they thought it was so dangerous 7 or 8 years ago. But here's what's very challenging and what's scary about this guy in New York City. So you have Eric Adams as an independent. You have Curtis Sliwa, who was the guy who started the Guardian Angels way back in the 1980s, who's a Republican. A Republican is not going to win in New York City. So the math works out this way. Eric Adams would actually have to, maybe this happens in the long run, he would have to win over most of the New York City voting Republicans. President Trump won 30% of the citywide vote in 2024. So Adams would have to remain competitive, not only with Democrats, he would have to win independents, he would have to win Republicans. Apparently, in one of the polls that came out in May, you have evidence that a coalition has an outside shot at a victory, especially if you have people like Chuck Schumer right now and others who are unwilling to commit to Mandami. But it's pretty frightening, because if you have Sliwa, this other independent named Walden, and Eric Adams votes, you have a competitive race. There actually is some discussion that maybe Curtis Sliwa steps out of the race and focuses on Eric Adams just to save the damn city.
Jeez.
So we'll see what happens there. That's interesting. We'll have more on that a little bit later in the show. Sue's News for a Monday coming up around the corner.
Traffic from the 97.1 FM Talk Traffic Center.
If you are headed out this afternoon, it's not too bad. I'm going to start, though, on the Illinois side. We've got an accident on eastbound 64 between 255 and 157, and that's created a jam back past 255. Accident reported now northbound 55 on the Missouri side, right at the 44 split, headed into downtown. Southbound is a slow go, headed down toward Bates in the construction zone. We've got moderate volume westbound 64, Hampton out through McCausland, heavier at Clarkson and between Winghaven and Highway N. Northbound 170 road work causing a delay, headed for 70. But 70 westbound isn't bad, just some moderate volume out at Lake St. Louis Boulevard. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's traffic on 97.1 FM Talk.
I do have a fun household story to share with you after the top of the hour, something that happened last night that could have been probably arguably worse than it was, Sue. You'll enjoy this one. I think you and Fred will get a kick out of it, and I will share this. I actually am quite curious to see if you guys had anything like this happen before. I always guide people into the bannerconstruction.com website. And one of my favorite homes, when you click on the showcase, is actually a home from the city of St. Louis. And it has this combination of dark red and brown colors that make it look like it's way out in, rural Missouri or something like that. It really, really looks beautiful. And it was a home that had light plain vinyl siding to begin with. And then the team from Banner goes in and they take a look at your goals, your objectives, and, obviously price and all these things come into play as well. And they say, how about we do it this way? And they can come up with a variety of, options for you. But in this case, they use this country lane red siding color from James Hardie. It's the Cedar Mill siding. They offset it with musket brown, softened fascia. It looks magical. Your home could look exactly like that or better if you trust the experts at Banner Construction. They just deal with the best. James Hardie, fiber cement siding. Pella replacement windows. Pella celebrating 100 years in business. Go to bannerconstruction.com today or call 314-569-1050.
We know there's a lot that can go on during one night of baseball. Long home runs, epic pitching performances, catches that defy space, time, and gravity.
Climbing the wall! Did he catch it? He did!
But what if you could get all of that summarized in a quick, concise, and at least we think, funny podcast that's under 10 minutes? Check out MLB.com's Morning Lineup. It runs Monday through Friday mornings on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you love listening most.
FM Florissant from the Kaufman Townsley St. Louis's Injury Lawyers Studio. Call 314-500-5000.
That's 314-500-5000.
All on the free Odyssey app.
Coming down on the wire in Washington, I'm John Saucier, Fox News. The Trump administration downplaying concerns from critics over Medicaid cuts in the Republican sweeping budget bill. Fox's Aaron Halpern reports from the White House.
North Carolina Republican Senator Tom Tillis is wrong about the One Big Beautiful Bill betraying President Trump's promise to not cut Medicaid. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says.
This bill protects Medicaid, as I laid out for you, for those who truly deserve this program, the needy, pregnant women, children, sick Americans who physically cannot work.
Tillis voted against the procedural step to advance the legislation over the weekend, warning provisions will push people off Medicaid. Hours later, the North Carolina Republican announced he is not running for a third term next year. At the White House, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
Several cities in and around Los Angeles County are canceling and postponing Independence Day celebrations because of ongoing immigration enforcement raids. Fox's Kristen Goodwin has more.
The city of Huntington Park announcing a 30-day pause on certain public summer events, citing growing disruptions caused by increased ICE activity in the region. The city of Whittier canceling its 4th of July Freedom Walk. Los Angeles County's Gloria Molina Grand Park Summer Block Party, which was set for Friday, has been postponed over what organizers call ongoing circumstances impacting the region. Other cities that have canceled or postponed events include Bell Gardens and Cudahy. At least 20 elected officials joining LA Mayor Karen Bass in calling for an end to the raids. Meanwhile, the Justice Department announcing it's suing LA over policies it says interfere with the Trump administration's enforcement of federal immigration laws. Kristen Goodwin, Fox News.
Kilmar Bregos Garcia's lawyer is asking a judge if he can stay in jail. There are concerns that he could be deported if he's released to await his trial on human smuggling. A federal judge in Tennessee ruled today. America's listening to Fox News.
Hey, listen to this. All I needed was a new starter. Got a great deal on eBay. Did it myself.
Yeah, that's cool. But how about the soft purr of an upgraded exhaust when it fits just right?
For me, it's the little things, like these new windshield wipers from eBay I installed.
From small fixes to big upgrades, eBay has all the parts you need at prices you'll love, guaranteed to fit every time. eBay, things people love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Did you know you can get your prescriptions for less at your local pharmacy? You can with GoodRx. It's the free app that can save you money on your medications. Just search for your prescription, choose the pharmacy and the price that works best for you, and then show your GoodRx coupon to your pharmacist at the drop-off counter. GoodRx works at over 70,000 pharmacies, including Walmart, Rite Aid, and Walgreens, and it works whether you have insurance or not. It's easy to save. Next time you drop off your prescription, check GoodRx. To start saving today, go to GoodRx.com. GoodRx is not insurance.
Air Comfort Service, heating, cooling, and insulation, weather.
There is a slow-moving summer cool front on the way, and it still could pop a couple of showers and thunderstorms scattered about up through about 9 or 10 o'clock tonight. It's 70 for the low, partly cloudy skies. On Tuesday, what a beautiful day. Lots of sunshine, less humid, comfortable. 87, we will feel the difference. Tuesday night, clear. 67, Wednesday, sunny, and 89 degrees. This is 97.1 FM Talk. Chief Meteorologist Dave Murray.
Are you nearing retirement and don't know if you have enough money saved to retire? That is scary. Do you have a written retirement financial plan in place? Well, when it comes to retirement planning, the trusted team at Financial and Tax Architects are the best. They've helped people all over St. Louis retire with confidence. And that's what you want. You want to retire with confidence. Now, they offer a one-night, 2.5-hour adult education class called Retirement Planning 101. They hold these at colleges over the St. Louis area and in Illinois. No cost, no obligation, just learning. And at this class, you learn how to avoid costly mistakes, how to maximize your income, how to reduce taxes in retirement. So call them today, 314-888-5101, or visit fta-ria.com and take the first step toward a smarter retirement. 314-888-5101.
I'm Dr. Nick Barnes at Health From Within Family Chiropractic in Rock Hill. At Health From Within, our mission is to transform the way you manage your health by bringing you the truth about health and healing. We use proven techniques to remove interference in the nervous system and maximize health naturally, without drugs or surgery. Connect with me at healthfromwithinstl.com and join me for Maximize Living on this station every Sunday at 8 a.m. or download the Maximize Living podcast, healthfromwithinstl.com.
God, remember when the Queen of Carpet and the Princess of Pile were flying around the arch selling flooring?
Andrea, that was the Queen of Carpet and the Princess of Tile.
Oh, that's right. But we don't need shtick here at Best Buy Flooring.
That's right, because our in-stock selection of carpet, carpet tile, sheet vinyl, laminate, hardwood, luxury vinyl plank, and luxury vinyl tile are already at low, low prices.
Come see us at our 3 area locations, North County, South County, and Metro East. Open 7 days a week.
Plus free financing on approved credit. Best flooring, best selection, Best Buy Flooring.
This hour of the Mark Reardon Show is sponsored by Gamma Tree Experts. Your trees deserve the best care. Call Gamma Tree Experts. Follow Mark on Twitter at Mark Reardon KFTK and Instagram at Mark Talk. You're listening to the Mark Reardon Show.
Check this song out here. This is a guy playing the accordion by the name of Steve Riley. Yeah, but it's with the Rolling Stones. What? Yeah, this is the Rolling Stones with this guy, Steve Riley. And it is a very, very cool song. You know who kind of guided me into that was our friend David Klein. That's Mick Jagger. It's such an awesome song. It's like only a 2.5-minute song, but it's really, really cool. So we're going to lighten the load here, and we always kind of tend to get a little softer, and Sue's News is coming up. But, Sue, I'm sure you heard the situation in Idaho with the firefighters.
Oh, just nuts.
Oh, my God. So 2 firefighters were killed, a third wounded. Somebody, and they've named this guy now. He's 20 years old. I'm not going to say his name because I don't like to give attention. They think that maybe he killed himself. But he calls in. Well, I guess what he did is he starts a fire. He starts a brush fire. And then he ambushes these firefighters. And this is what the 911 call sounded like.
We need law enforcement up here immediately. We've got another Coeur d'Alene firefighter down. We've got 2 unresponsive battalion chiefs, gunshot wounds, multiple gunshot wounds. 2 Coeur d'Alene firefighters are down. I'm pinned down. It's clear to me that this fire was set intentionally to draw us in.
Yeah, and they're still trying to figure it out. This is what's interesting. They actually, Tim Fitch is on a little bit later this afternoon. We can talk to him about this. The way that they found the kid is they found a cell signal. Did you hear this, Fred?
Yeah. Oh, did they ping him?
They pinged him.
But I don't even know how they knew it was him, but they knew that there was a cell signal coming from this particular area where they thought that the fire started. So that's crazy when you think about it, right? And crazy in a good way.
That's straight out of Dateline.
Yeah, no kidding. So, Fred, I texted you yesterday because I was trying to find the baseball game. And I said, hey, can you watch the baseball game? Where is it? I go on because I get Bally or whatever the hell they call it, FanDuel Sports Midwest. I get that through my Amazon Prime, right? And it wasn't up there. So I'm searching around, I'm Googling it. Then I find out it's one of those Roku games with MLB TV, right?
It's funny.
Wait,
you
what?
texted, you texted me yesterday
at the exact moment I was trying to find it on my TV. And I have Roku, so I had no problem finding it once I got to Roku. But since it was an 11 a.m. start, by the time I was looking, like a little after 1, the game was over already.
Right. It was an
So
early
wasn't even
start. It
being
was like 10:45 or
offered.
something like that.
Yeah.
Well, it was one of those things where then I go into my subscriptions and it says that because I paid $20 a month for that. It says, well, it's going to rebuild on July 3rd. I'm like, well, wait a second. It's not July 3rd yet. But then it was a good thing for me to look because I've had this credit card issue with fraud. I had to re-update the credit card. So I would have lost it had I not changed the credit card. So I mentioned earlier, some of the stuff I'm trying to rush through and I feel like I'm rushed, but I wanted to tell you guys this story. So my son came into town, as I mentioned, from Houston, going back up to Chicago, and he's bringing some laundry with him. So he's going to do some laundry. And the washing machine was having some issues. Now, do you do the laundry, Fred, in your
Yes.
house? Okay. You do the laundry.
Yes.
Sue, do you know that there's like a little filter on the washing machine that you have to kind of address every once in a while?
On the washing machine?
Yeah, at least with mine, there's
No.
something. Okay. So what happened yesterday is it was not draining. There was water that was sitting in the washing machine. So I
Question.
did like a rinse and spin cycle to try to
Okay.
get it to drain. But then I also remembered that there's this little thing underneath the washing machine. It's like the bottom of I think I have a Samsung, right?
Okay, question.
Yeah.
Is this one of those side loaders?
Yeah. Yeah.
See, that's why I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Okay, because the rest
Yes.
of us,
well,
in the Speed Queen world and the Fred world, top loaders.
90% of Americans probably have
Yes,
side
you're
loaders at
probably
this point.
right.
So there's this little thing, and I usually have to open it with a knife to crack it open.
Yeah,
and
I
then
don't
there's
know
a filter, and you untwist it. Now, usually it's clogged with, look, we have pets, we have pet hair and stuff like that. So I've encountered this before. So as soon as there was an issue with the washing machine, that was my guess, right? So I did the rinse and spin just to get the water out of it. And then I put a towel down because I knew water was going to kick out of it. So I opened this thing and it was like Niagara Falls.
Oh,
I
no.
mean, there was so much water that came out. This is not actual sound effects, but I needed not only one towel, but I'm yelling for Becky and my son, like, bring me beach towels, bring as many towels as you can. It was so much that it did leak downstairs. Now it was in the unfinished part, but then I pulled that filter out and something was kind of stuck in that filter that went through the washing machine. I blame my daughter. It was probably something she had in her pocket, and it was just clogged with a bunch of hair and stuff like that. So it did what I kind of knew it was going to do, but it did it on steroids, and it was a mess. I mean, it was a complete mess. Now, there is a lesson to be learned from this, right? What's the lesson? Usually I address that thing about once every 8 months. I'm like, oh yeah, something's wrong with the washing machine. I can see that there's an issue. I bet it's that little filter thing. And then I unscrew it and it fixes it. I'm thinking I should probably do it a little bit more than once a year, right?
Apparently, and I don't know that we even have those, Fred.
Yeah, I don't know of it.
Well, maybe it is because of the side loader. All I know
wonder.
is whatever it is, it takes some of the gunk that you're probably not supposed to put through your washing
Wow.
machine. And when I unscrewed it, it just came. There was everything in my pantry. That there was a bag of rice that I think my bunny had opened. So when I went to lift the big bag of rice went everywhere, and it's in the wet part of the the flooding that's about to happen. Somehow, some way, I stayed sane through all of this, and I went and got the shop vac and I cleaned it up, and life
Like a
is good again.
person.
And then I took all the towel. My neighbors thought I was crazy probably because every beach towel that I had in my existence was outside on the side of my house today, just trying to dry enough so I could shake the rice out of it. It was ridiculous.
Oh, the
this
Reardons are at it again.
This is the Rolling Stones doing Zydeco. Listen to this.
Traffic from the 97.1 FM Talk Traffic Center.
We've got some volume out there, but it's not too much. It's a holiday week. Northbound 170 slowing at 70. We've got westbound 70 looking pretty good out of downtown. Now, 64, we've got a report of an accident kind of just past Spady, and that has created a jam back to the other side of Lindbergh. Then some moderate volume out at Lake St. Louis Boulevard. 44 westbound jams approaching 141 to a point just west of there. And we've got 44 also slowing at 270. On the Illinois side, looks like they've cleared the accident eastbound 64 near 157. Traffic is thinning out. Still an accident northbound 55 at 44 on the Missouri side. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's traffic on 97.1 FM Talk.
This report is sponsored by Overhead Door Company of St. Louis.
Cash for Clunkers is back. Overhead Door Company of St. Louis is paying cash for your clunkers now. Schedule online at overheaddoorsstlouis.com or call 314-781-5200. It's cash for clunkers now at Overhead Door Company of St. Louis.
Monday edition of Sue's News is just around the corner on 97.1 FM Talk. Don't forget, we have Frank Cusumano on Monday. He's coming up right around 4:45 as well. Guys, if you have low energy, fatigue, decreased libido, brain fog, anything like that, even sleep or mood swings, loss of muscle mass, you've probably by this time in your life heard of TRT. That's testosterone replacement therapy. Maybe you've even taken a step with some of the competitors to Game Day Men's Health and you've gotten TRT. Maybe you're not completely satisfied with the customer service. So that's why I'm going to guide you into Game Day Men's Health with 3 awesome locations in the area. They can do TRT. They can do medical weight loss. They have vitamin therapy, peptide therapy. They have very unique ED treatments that address the root causes. They provide long-term solutions, and it's a very comfortable and private situation and environment. They're very proud of the way that they do business. It's world-class. You're not going to feel rushed. They're offering you a free testosterone test. If you go in, you make an appointment, the lab will return the results in just 20 minutes. So the whole visit will take you no more than an hour. They'll answer your questions. They'll leave you educated with a game plan. Get it? Game Day Men's Health. Not everyone is the same. There is no one size fits all. You're going to get a customized treatment plan, all-inclusive price. You can get all the consultations, all the questions asked, never, ever any added fees or extra charges. 3 locations, O'Fallon, Missouri, Glen Carbon, Illinois, and that great location in Chesterfield that I've been to right off of Highway 40 at Clarkson Road. Get back to the top of your game with Game Day Men's Health at GameDayMen'sHealth.com.
When you're approaching retirement, there are a lot of questions to answer. Do you have enough money to fund your income for life? How should you claim Social Security? And what's your plan for health care and long-term care? Hi, I'm Eric Robert, Director of Investments with the ClearPath Wealth Management Group at Stifel and host of On the Money Saturday mornings at 11 on 97.1 FM Talk. Don't leave your retirement to chance. It's crucial to understand and address relevant risks before you retire. Our team can help you get organized, guide you through critical retirement decisions, and create an investment portfolio designed around your needs. To schedule your free retirement plan consultation, go to clearpathinvesting.com. That's clearpathinvesting.com. Or call us at 636-695-2650. That's clearpathinvesting.com or 636-695-2650. Stifel Nicholas and Company Incorporated, member SIPC and NYSE.
You're listening to The Mark Reardon Show on 97.1 FM Talk.
A little Billy Ocean, even though it doesn't
Love
sound
it.
like very good quality Billy Ocean, but there you go, Caribbean Queen. Let's see what we have coming up. Oh, the Big Beautiful Bill is what we started with this afternoon, and I still have a lot of questions. I don't know what to believe about what's in this and what's not in it. I would say that if you would quiz, nothing against even our, local delegation, if you would quiz United States Senator right now on what's in this package and what's not in this package, they wouldn't be able to tell you. They know that they're making individual votes right now on some of the amendments, but it's crazy. So we have Richard Stern, who's with the Heritage Institute. He's going to come up here after Sue's News. Frank Cusumano at 4:45. Speaking of a Monday edition of Sue's News.
These allegations are deeply concerning.
Does the president have any comment?
We're not going to comment.
It's not clear messaging.
No.
And now, Sue's News. Brought to you by Sue.
Well, it's National Corvette Day, National Meteor Watch Day, and National Outfit of the Day. Fred, so call Joyce. It's National Outfit of the Day,
What does
and
that
I
even
have no
mean?
idea. But
What? But
that's
isn't that technically every day?
yeah.
But Fred's still wearing the shoes.
Yeah,
That's-
Fred,
that's
by the
true.
way, we
It's like-
did want to mention that.
It's 5 days in a row or
Yeah,
something like that,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Now we have to recap just a little bit. Fred
Is that wrong?
It's
No,
great.
it's
great.
great.
There's nothing wrong with
It's
it at all.
great.
But what's the brand again? Remind me.
On Cloud.
We were in a meeting, Sue, last week with our boss, Steve Moore. Fred and I were in this meeting, right? Steve had the exact same shoes on, but they were just white. Fred
Oh
has
my
black.
gosh.
They could have traded if they had the same size. But Fred accidentally left those shoes on, not his loafers. Can we say loafers?
Yes.
And ever since then, he's a changed man. He's a
Yes.
completely changed man.
He's walking around on cloud all day.
He seems a little happier, a little more pep in his
Yes.
step. It's like he's waking up in the morning, like,
Totally
the sun is
agree.
bright. It's a beautiful day.
I totally agree with
Well,
this.
Now we
You
need
know,
to get you
that's
some other
all right.
colors, though, right?
Pardon me.
Now
Oh,
we
no,
get you
no.
maybe some variety of colors.
Yes, listen, let's just start where we're starting.
Baby steps.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Now, I thought of Ethan because over the weekend, there was a moving truck on my street, and it wasn't. It was a guy who lives across the street. I believe his significant other was moving in, and they had, instead of movers, she's local, right? It looked like friends helping. And I thought, I saw this morning. I thought, I'm going to ask Ethan. In a survey, 38% of people say they secretly hate even being asked to help a friend or family member move. And I think that number is probably low. But what I find is the ute, when you are younger, that's when you help friends move. Are you in that phase currently, Ethan?
You know, I don't know if I've ever gotten asked to help someone move.
You will now.
Oh,
but there's a small list in which I would truly be okay with.
Yes.
It. Small list.
Fred.
My son Noah in DC is 25, and it's like every weekend he's
Now,
helping
that
another
doesn't surprise me in
another
DC.
friend
Yes.
move, and he says, "Oh, it's our friend group. We all agree to help. We've got one
Within
guy
that
that'll drive
group.
a truck, and the rest of us do all the running and all the carrying."
See, I don't think I've ever asked. Well, I have asked people to help me move, like back when I was younger.
Yes.
But I even offered to help my kids move, and they said no, we got it. So I was a little surprised. Aiden, when he moved to Chicago, handled everything on his own. He did store some things in our basement, which was no big deal. We brought some of it up to him, but no, he didn't ask. And I don't even think he asked friends to help. Maybe he did. Can't keep track of all that.
They say that if you're the one needing help, the top 3 things you can do are buying food and drinks, paying for the help, and promising to return. Kind of like Fred said, well, all within the circle.
Right.
My mom used to go in advance when my friends would help me move, make a big pot of chili, clean the kitchen, put my kitchen up, and then feed everybody afterwards. But it's still
That's
a big
vital.
ask, especially when you live on the second floor of a condo, and it can get ugly.
Stairs, man, it gets bad real
It gets
quick.
real bad. All right, on this day in history, 166 years ago in 1859, 5,000 people gathered to watch Frenchman Charles Blondin walk across Niagara Falls on a tightrope. It only took him 5 minutes. Later, he crossed blindfolded on stilts, pushing a wheelbarrow, and while carrying a man on his back. I do it every year, but it freaks me out every time. So, yeah.
I'm dumbfounded how
do you do
can
that in 5 minutes?
without any impediment.
What was his name?
Charles Blondin, Blondin.
Who was the guy that did it just like 10 years ago?
He's one of the
He did like
I can't think of their name.
He's the family of them.
Yes.
Yes.
The Walendas, that's
Yes,
it.
and he did Niagara Falls and did like the Grand Canyon and all those, and that was all big TV.
By the way, if you're keeping score this afternoon, that is the second Niagara Falls reference, because when I was talking about the gushing water out of my washing machine, I used Niagara Falls. It's very rare, but sometimes people have bingo cards at home.
We had 126 years ago today in 1899 was when Charles Murphy became the first person to reach 60 miles per hour on a bike. Now,
I remember you talking about that
this?
before. Yeah.
It was behind a train,
Right.
and they went and put 10-foot wide some just boards on there that were seamless so he could do it. And he held onto the back of the train. They got him started, and then he pedaled to keep up. But one article said he only made it to 57 4/5 miles per hour, but it was still something.
Mark, how fast have you gone?
I've hit right around 50 on a downhill
Jeez,
out there in the Augusta area. It scared the hell out of me. I've done it a couple of
that will
times.
scare me.
Yeah. But yeah, you're just kind of holding on for dear life, and you're looking at your speedometer, and then you're like, and this was a stretch out there. People who ride bikes know
were you?
the area that I'm talking about. It's out in Augusta
Just
and that area out there.
completely out.
But you're not, you don't want to go that fast if someone can come out of a driveway or anything like that. So it's not that situation. But it is a steep downhill, and you kind of get down into the position, the arrow position, if you will, too.
Yep.
And you just hope that you don't get a flat tire. I think that's basically what I was hoping.
Man, that scares me. On the new brakes, I'd be okay, but the old school ones with the just squeezing your
How's that
tire,
again? This is honestly, though, it's one of the reasons that for the last decade, I used to ride bikes pretty seriously. I was one of those annoying people out in spandex on Clayton Road, etc. But it just got too dangerous. And that really wasn't the most dangerous, daunting part. It's usually with cars involved.
Yes.
But that was, I hit right around 50, if not a little bit over 50 miles per hour one time.
Man, that's
A couple
scary.
times.
And on this day in history, here's our music for today. 41 years ago.
Can you tell me what it's labeled by any chance?
Huey
Because
Lewis, Sue.
It's not labeled
Matt.
Sue.
I gave it to Matt to put in, maybe not.
How about we do it without the music? Because I don't see it in here.
Oh, boy.
Honestly, I do not see it in here.
Well, all right.
And I sent this one to you because I wanted you to do
and
it.
I sent it to I should have copied you. But Sports, the third album by Huey Lewis and the News, reached #1 on the Billboard 200 and ultimately charted for 160 weeks. I had it Heart and Soul. That's the one I picked out. Is it there? Oh, yeah. Okay.
Let's try it here.
All right.
Oh, there you go. Was it in there and I just didn't see it? Okay, well, in fairness, I was looking. Usually, the way that Ethan does things, and Ethan had a few more responsibilities, he always puts Sue's News, and I was looking for Huey. I don't think it was in there, Ethan. I think you just put it in there to mess with me. I swear to God.
No, it was in there. Anyway, this hit #1 41 years ago today. You could not go anywhere at the time without hearing something from this album. Anyway.
So I was told, I won't tell you who told me this story, but I was told in fairly good confidence that Huey Lewis was once and maybe forever banned from Belle Reve Country Club.
Seriously? What did he do?
Well, he and the band, I guess, got out there and they did not respect the golf course.
Oh, well.
Now that could be a rumor, but I heard it from a pretty good source who I will not identify. But yeah, they were not to be invited back again.
I don't think somebody would make that up, but I
don't think so either.
I would not have pegged them for acting inappropriately
Well,
on the golf
this
course.
would have been a while back, though, too.
That's fair.
Alcohol makes people do a lot of inappropriate things when you don't think they're going to do inappropriate things. Guessing perhaps that alcohol was involved. That's all
probably a good guess. F1 took the weekend box office with $55.6 million. This, of course, is Brad Pitt as an F1 driver. It made $88.4 million overseas, totaling worldwide $144 million. Now, it cost $200 million to produce before marketing, if not closer to 300. So it's going to need to
That's
keep
a wide
going.
range, though, isn't it?
But yeah, I guess marketing is super expensive.
Marketing
right now.
is super expensive. There's no doubt about it.
And you can see this thing on IMAX, and they're going to keep it on there until Superman, the 8 billionth version of Superman, comes out. And
which is next week.
It is next
on
week.
the 12th.
So,
now, look, that's James Gunn, and I think I have full faith and confidence that this new version of Superman is going to be a smashing success, both quality-wise and box office-wise. Look, James Gunn behind it gives me all kinds of confidence.
Yeah,
St.
I do
Louis
like
guy.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Megan 2.0 bombed over the weekend. It only made $10.2 million. Wah, wah. And John Travolta showed up at a Grease sing-along at Hollywood Bowl Friday night. He was dressed as Danny Zuko, and the whole place went nuts. I kind of loved it. And he didn't really sing. He just kind of came out and said, "Hey, welcome, blah, blah, blah," and the whole place went, woo!
Okay, can I ask a fair question?
Yeah.
Though? Did you see a picture of it?
I did.
Okay, like dressing up at his age like
he
that?
still looked all right.
Okay, good for
Yeah.
him.
That's not his hair. I guarantee you that. But it was a good wig. And Rob Lowe says the script for St. Elmo's Fire sequel is really getting good. How about that for out of nowhere?
Wow. That's 40 years old.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have you ever heard of that movie, Ethan?
No.
There you go.
I don't think I'd put it on the list.
Why would they reboot that? That doesn't make any sense
I don't
at
know.
all.
And I'd like to know who's writing it. I haven't gone in on the deep dive for that.
Well, I have to play some John Parr music, I guess.
Yeah,
at
there
some
you
point,
go.
Right? That's the theme from St. Elmo's Fire.
They were also, I thought of Joyce when this story came up today. Color psychology is the study of how different colors affect your mood and behavior. I think I gave a presentation on this in college with different outfits. Okay. Now, much of the evidence in this field is anecdotal at best, but artists and interior designers have long known how important colors are to your mood. Here's what they say. Red, yellow, and orange are warm colors. They evoke feelings ranging from warmth to hostility with red. And purple, green, blue, they're cool colors. They can make you feel anything from calm to sadness. And this woman says green is the psychological primary color that balances with red, blue, and yellow. So if you're too stressed, put on some green. It will calm you down. And if you're down in the dumps, it will lift you up. So green is the answer. Yes. Were you going to say something?
No, I was going to tell you that we were running out of
telling me.
time. That's
Okay,
all. Sorry.
finally.
That's that international radio symbol.
Oh, yeah. And I thought you were going to say
Sorry.
And finally, it's News News. We have today's random fact, and it's random. The first appearance of Cookie Monster was in an IBM training film in 1967. And that's it for Sue's News.
Oh, you're just going to leave us with that?
Yeah, I only had
and
one.
not tell that. That's why in the hell would that be?
Well, I'll look it up and tell you tomorrow.
You know what? And that would give me an opportunity to play C is for Cookie. So why don't you do that?
Okay.
And I'll pull that piece of audio to remind me tomorrow. All right. That's very interesting and baffling to me as well. We have Richard Stern, who's a heritage scholar, is going to try to explain the latest on the big, beautiful bill coming up.
I'm Chad Robinson with Your Money Now. Stocks were higher today on Wall Street, with the Dow gaining 275 points. The S&P 500 added 31, and the tech-heavy NASDAQ grew by nearly 100. The White House will likely ask for more countries to drop their digital services tax as part of ongoing trade talks, according to a senior Trump administration official. The move follows Canada rescinding its DST over the weekend. The remark from one of President Trump's top advisors came the day after Canada walked back its DST in order to advance broader trade negotiations with the U.S. Moderna today saying its experimental mRNA-based flu vaccine produced a stronger immune response than a currently available shot. The news clears the path forward for the product and the company's separate combination flu and COVID jab. U.S. crude oil futures for August are down slightly below $65 a barrel. That's Your Money Now.
Find what you love what you find. A Total Wine and More. There's so much waiting for you. Spirits and beer, thousands of wines. Guides in the know and prices so low, it just might blow your mind. You're gonna find what you love and love what you find.
With curbside pickup and delivery available, you'll always find what you love, only at Total Wine and More.
Drink responsibly, B21.
Millions of Americans take medicine like Ozempic and Zepbound. Many of them are overpaying by thousands of dollars a year. These GLP-1 medications for diabetes, weight loss, and more may not always be covered by your insurance, but GoodRx can help. GoodRx helps you save every month on prescriptions at over 70,000 pharmacies nationwide. Best of all, it's free to use. Check GoodRx to save on GLP-1s. Just go to GoodRx.com/GLP. That's GoodRx.com/GLP. GoodRx is not insurance, but can be used instead of insurance, including Medicare and other federal and state-funded programs.
You want to retire soon, but everyone keeps telling you to wait until you're 65. After all, that's the age that you qualify for Medicare and you're close to full retirement age. I'm Marvin Mitchell, president of Compass Retirement Solutions. In my new book, Retire Early, The 9 Critical Decisions When Retiring Before 65, I discuss proper planning to help make early retirement possible. When to take Social Security, what to do with your 401k, healthcare, how to maximize retirement income, and much more. Get a complimentary copy of Retire Early by calling 1-800-743-8510. That's 1-800-743-8510. Can you retire early? Call 1-800-743-8510 for your copy of Retire Early, The 9 Critical Decisions When Retiring Before 65.
Investments and services offered through Compass Retirement Group, a registered investment advisory in Missouri and Illinois. Compass Retirement Solutions is not affiliated with the U.S. government or any governmental agency.
It's time for a $98 AC tune-up.
And at 4:32, this portion of the show is sponsored by Jerry Kelly Heating and Air. Well, I mentioned earlier, you know, if you would even try to quiz a member of the United States Senate right now and say, what's in this bill, what's not in this bill, I don't know that they could tell you that right now.
This bill in its current form will betray the very promise that Donald J. Trump made.
So this bill makes the 2017 tax cuts permanent
It avoids a tax increase for your family that's coming in December.
Republicans are about to pass the single most expensive bill in U.S. history to give tax breaks to billionaires while taking away Medicaid, SNAP benefits, and good-paying jobs for millions of people.
Yeah, well, it's always tax, cuts for billionaires, even though the billionaires are not making their money via paychecks. It's the regular, ordinary American worker who is going to be taxed higher if this doesn't pass. Now, having said that, I don't think I love everything that's in here. And in the end, I don't even know if we're going to know exactly what is in here when they vote on it, if they vote and send it over to the House. Richard Stern is with us. He's a heritage scholar and expert on fiscal policy. Richard, good afternoon. Welcome to 97.1 FM Talk. How are you?
Hey, doing well. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Let me just start here. How do you even begin to track what's going on? Because this is so fast and furious. They've been at this all weekend. There's behind the scenes meetings. There's amendments that are being voted on. You had Tom Tillis and Rand Paul vote against one Medicaid aspect for completely different reasons. So how do you even get a handle on what's happening right now in Washington?
Well, it's certainly a cluster, but the important thing about it is there's actually only a handful of balls in the air at any moment. So it's a large bill. There's a lot of things going on. But the truth is almost all of it, months ahead of time, some of this years ahead of time, because this bill is extending a very large bill from 8 years ago. So, you always can kind of focus on what's in the air, what's going on, what seems to be new. But then, I used to be a congressional staffer. The way that place works is it's actually built on a lot of trust. You have a lot of people who who are, their expertise is this thing or that thing, and you call those people up and that they're tracking that part of what's going on, and you say, hey, what do you think about this? It's a lot of that.
But even, we love Senator John Kennedy from Louisiana, and he's someone who's featured quite a bit on the show with his audio clips. And I think it was a week ago today, he came out and he said, look, I found out some things that were in this bill that I don't like. And I'm guessing that other senators have found the same, both on the Republican side and the Democrat side. Now, you also have this dynamic of some Republicans, this is more prevalent in the House. Some Republicans are those who won in districts that maybe Kamala Harris even carried. So then you have, maybe we should start with this, with the SALT deduction. This came up earlier. People hear that and they don't know what that is. My wife even said that today. What is the SALT deduction? So explain what that is, and then I'll lead you into a soundbite here from Jason Smith on that very topic.
No, of course. I think you're right. There are a lot of bad things in the bill as well. It's a mixed bag for sure. But, let's talk about SALT. So SALT is a deduction for people who pay a lot of money in state and local taxes. Now, we all have to pay it, but the truth is most of the deduction itself is taken by tax filers in the handful of counties in and around New York City and Washington, D.C., and that corridor, and in, L.A. and Sacramento and San Francisco out in California. It's a blue state, high, tax liberal state deduction, because those are the states that impose the most taxes. So the SALT deduction ends up being a bailout for those people that stay in those high tax states and fund those liberal governments and all of the shenanigans that they do. But really, they're being bailed out by all of the rest of us.
So the way I understand it is, and Jason Smith, who is from Missouri, he's the House Ways and Means chair, he was asked about this by Trey Gowdy on Fox last night. This is what he said. And I guess let me just set up a little bit better, because Trey's question was, can Republicans in the House deal with this? Those who are opposed to this, can they accept the compromise, if you will?
Without a doubt, they can live with the changes. It's exactly the same provision that passed out of the House, except it changes the years from 10 to 5. The amount of $40,000 is still the same. This is something that they can live with, they can deliver on. It was a compromise with the United States Senate. We're going to get the job done.
So some of this is a math equation from a variety of perspectives. Sometimes it's a numbers game. In this particular case, it's a years game, right? Because they're saying, look, the number is going to stay the same, but we're only going to allow this to happen for 5 years, and that's our compromise. That's kind of weird, isn't it?
Well, it is, but I'll tell you, maybe I've been a congressional staff for too long and been heritage too long, because that sounds normal to me. But let me unpack that, because I think your intuition's correct that it seems weird. But the way I would think about it is this: a lot of the tax cuts in the bill are permanent. These are things that Americans will see for generations to come. These are certain tax provisions that'll generate business growth that will allow new factories to be built in America, and these are permanent. So what are we spending in to get those provisions? You can think of SALT as a bribe. I've talked about it before, but it's a 5-year bribe of a handful of Republicans in these blue states in Congress. And so it's enough money for them to go home to New York and et cetera and say, hey, I got wins for you, reelect me, so they can vote for the bill. And it is money being stolen from hardworking Americans, and it is a bad provision, and it is basically a bribe, but it's a temporary one. And what they are giving for us are votes for permanent tax relief that will juice economic growth and lead to prosperity for most working class Americans for generations to come.
Richard Stern is here. He is a former congressional staffer, a heritage scholar right now. What about on Medicaid? And where are they landing on Medicaid? Because as I indicated, you had a couple of senators over the weekend vote on these amendments, and Rand Paul and Tom Tillis. Tom Tillis announces he's not going to run for re-election. They vote no for maybe two different reasons. But we have a senator here in Missouri, Senator Holloway, who's very concerned. I even have audio from him today saying, look, I don't like the implications of this moving forward. It's going to hurt rural hospitals. But he's probably going to vote for these bills, right?
He probably will. I will say this, he's good on a lot of things. I disagree with him on this one. There's actually a lot of other provisions in the bill that will help rural hospitals. To be perfectly clear, there is a whole fund created by this bill that provides money just to rural hospitals. So the idea that they're going to be hit by getting rid of these hospital payments that go to every hospital across the board, frankly, I think is nonsense. In fact, what the bill is doing is removing payments that largely go to hospitals that, you guessed it, cater to illegal aliens, that cater to monkeying around with drug makers and other providers to game the system to maximize federal dollars coming back to them. And in fact, that's part of why we're cutting that money and replacing it with things like the rural hospital fund that's in the bill.
So one of the issues that came up late last week, and I don't know where this kind of worked itself out over the weekend, you have the Senate parliamentarian that ruled on a couple of these issues and said, look, this does not meet the requirements of a simple majority vote. You need the 60 vote threshold, which is something that is impossible to get right now with the makeup of the Senate. How was that worked out in the end, or has it been worked out?
No, that's still very much on the table to be worked out. But just to make it clear kind of how it works, I think the way you can think about this is that normally in the Senate, you need 60 votes to get something through. As we all know, Republicans have 53, they don't have 60, and depends on how you define conservative. The conservatives really have maybe 50 or 51 seats in the Senate. And there's this special rule within the Senate that if you make a bill that does certain things and doesn't do other certain things, then it kind of magically can sail through with 51 votes, not 60.
Right.
The parliamentarian gets to look at it, and she gets to say, well, my advice would be to the chair that this bill or this provision or that provision of the bill meets the magic rules or doesn't meet the magic rules. But here's the important thing about this. It's not actually her call. She is merely there to advise in public to the chair to say this, in my opinion, meets or doesn't meet. At the end of the day, as long as 51 votes in the Senate vote to clear the bill, it means that they're basically telling her that they're going to ignore her ruling. So that's very much up for debate. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes negotiations, line item by line item in the bill, and the Senate has a pious belief that it wants to keep its rules, so they do care about her opinion. So all of that is very much still in the conversation.
So one side says, look, this is a, $1.7 trillion savings to the deficit. The other side says, no, it's a $3.6 trillion increase. And they include, I even mentioned this chart that was in the New York Times. A lot of that is just by extending the way that they come up with these figures, extending the Trump tax cuts, which I think most of us should agree is important right now. But how do you believe the numbers here? Because let's face it, when Republicans are in control, they'll say, we don't believe the CBO numbers. When Democrats are in control, they'll do the same thing. They both say the same thing about the CBO. So how do you know? The Heritage Institute is a group that is very and always has been about fiscal sanity. But there seems to still be, even in this big, beautiful bill, which is why Elon Musk is out there saying that the Republicans are the party of, Porky Pig. How do you know what the truth is right now?
Oh, it's definitely hard to do that, but allow me to cut through that kind of muddled politics. I think you're right. There's a lot of politics going on. I think the important way to view this is the about $1.5 trillion or so of net spending cuts in the bill, because the bill does spend a lot of money and then cuts a lot of money. But what I would say is on average, that $1.5 trillion or so of net spending cuts is $1.5 trillion, not of deficit reduction, but of shrunk government. We are shrinking the government by $1.5 trillion or so dollars. Now, the deficit will go up. And you might say, and everybody listening might say, whoa, wait a second. The national debt's already huge. Why would we want the debt to go up? But here's what I want to offer you about that. There's two different ways for the debt to go up. One of them is clearly bad, and one of them is sometimes bad. If you grow the debt by growing government, then that's just expanding government control. It's expanding how much of the resources that we all produce the government takes. But if you expand the deficit because you're lowering taxes, which is what this bill does, you're trading burdens. So we will all get a lower tax bill, but a higher deficit bill. And deficits, of course, produce higher inflation and interest rates. So that's why it's not as harmful as, frankly, when the liberals do it.
In theory. All right, one final question, and it happens to be a two-part question. Do you think this finishes or crosses the finish line? And then it's a two-part question because do you think it crosses the finish line by the 4th of July? Because those things seem to be two different things right now.
I think it does. I think the Senate's going to clear it tonight, early hours tomorrow morning. And when the House wants to move quickly, it moves quickly.
All right. There's the prediction. I still wonder if it can cross the finish line. I'm going to trust your word on that. Thank you, Richard. I appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Take care. We got Frank Cusumano on a Monday afternoon. We talk a little Cardinals baseball. 9 games over 500 right now as they start a new week. Frank's coming up next.
Catch anything you missed today by getting the show podcast at 971talk.com. Traffic from the 97.1 FM Talk Traffic Center.
Southbound 55 drivers, it's a slow go for you down at Bates. Northbound, there was an accident at 44 that caused a delay. Westbound 6440. Watch out. We've got a slow go pretty much from Hampton in pockets out through Spady. They just cleared an accident there, so it should improve. 70, some moderate volume at Jennings Station Road and at Highway K. Out west, 64. That's a little slow on either side of Lake St. Louis Boulevard. And 44 westbound is slowing at 270 and again at Highway 100. And then it opens up. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's traffic on 97.1 FM Talk.
Well, I mentioned there was a reference to cycling a little earlier. I've told this story before. That's how I met Neil Gelman of the Gelman team. I was on a bike. I got a flat tire. Neil rescued me, and that began a friendship and a business relationship because they've worked for me as realtors as well. They like to say they're a marketing company that specializes in real estate, and that's very true. And even though you might assume that a market like this, where supply is still very, very tight and demand is relatively high, that it would just be easy to put your house on the market and boom, you sell it for top dollar or over asking price. That's not the way it's working right now. We had Neil on recently kind of giving an update for the market, and it's a little trickier than that. The Gelmans are going to come in and make sure if you want top dollar, you get top dollar. If you want an instant cash offer, they have options for you as well. They also have a great tool on their website, and it's up there right now. If you go to thegelmanteam.com, it says at the very top of the page, how much is your home really worth? Find out for free. You click on that, a pop-up will come up. You have to allow the pop-up. You enter your address. It'll kick back to you very, very quickly, the price at which you will probably list your home for a very accurate price, not just a guesstimate, if you're going to list your house this week with the Gelman team. Now, they won't sell that information. You can keep it to yourself. You don't have to do anything. There's no obligation whatsoever. If you need their help, and they do great work here in St. Louis. They have a proven process. They have experience to meet whatever your goals are. They are awesome realtors. I can speak for them not only as friends, but as a client as well. Check out thegelmanteam.com today. That's thegelmanteam.com.
Are you nearing retirement and don't know if you have enough money saved to retire? That is scary. Do you have a written retirement financial plan in place? Well, when it comes to retirement planning, the trusted team at Financial and Tax Architects are the best. They've helped people all over St. Louis retire with confidence. And that's what you want. You want to retire with confidence. Now, they offer a one-night, 2.5-hour adult education class called Retirement Planning 101. They hold these at colleges over the St. Louis area and in Illinois. No cost, no obligation, just learning. And at this class, you learn how to avoid costly mistakes, how to maximize your income, how to reduce taxes in retirement. So call them today, 314-888-5101, or visit fta-ria.com and take the first step toward a smarter retirement. 314-888-5101.
Hey, it's Matt, your leaf filter trusted pro. Gutters are an often neglected part of the home. They're also one of the most important. Clogged, overflowing gutters can cause serious problems like foundation damage or basement flooding, which can cost thousands of dollars to fix. Let's face it, cleaning gutters yourself is not only a hassle, it can be dangerous. But when you get Leaf Filter, you'll never have to worry about cleaning clogged gutters again. Get started today by visiting leaffilter.com/radio to schedule your free inspection. If you decide to move forward, we'll professionally clean, realign, and seal your gutters before installing our patented stainless steel micro mesh system. Leaf Filter keeps out everything but the water. And it's backed by a lifetime transferable no clogs warranty. So you're protected for good. We're in your neighborhood and ready to help. Visit Leaf Filter today for a free inspection and estimate, and you could save up to 30%. Visit leaffilter.com/radio. That's leaffilter.com/radio.
Viking, dedicated to creating travel experiences for the thinking person, with programs designed for cultural enrichment on board and on shore. Discover more at Viking.com. That's Viking.com. Viking.com.
97.1 FM Talk is proud to partner with Guns N' Hoses to support St. Louis area tornado victims, and we need your help. This is Annie inviting you to bring supplies to Dave Munganast, St. Louis Honda, Monday through Saturday. Visit 971talk.com/relief.
Monday afternoon, we always visit with Frank Cusumano, KSDK sports director. The Cardinals swept, well, I like to call them still the Tribe, Cleveland over the weekend. And they're 9 games, Frank Cusumano, above 500 right now. 9 games over 500. That's not too bad, although the Brewers are hot and the Cubs remain hot as well. How are you this afternoon?
Doing great. And I'm glad we're leading with the Cardinals. It's the only thing anybody's really talking about right now. And it's 10 out of their last 13. It's winning on the road, which they haven't done in a long time. And you know what I think the coolest thing about this squad right now is Nolan Gorman, whose OPS the month of June is up to 900. He hit that bomb yesterday. I was with Andy Van Slyke earlier today, and he thinks that when Gorman is right, and that's where he's keeping his head still and he's going to the opposite field once in a while, that he has like top 10% power in baseball. I mean, there's a reason the guy hit 27 home runs as a 23-year-old. If he can keep this up, gosh, does this make for a really scary lineup.
So shame on me as a Cardinals fan, because I tuned the game in on Saturday afternoon. It's 6-1. I'm like, maybe I'm going to watch some episodes of The Bear and catch up. And then my wife gets home later on from the pool and says the Cardinals won that game. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, it was their largest deficit victory of the season. So, yeah, it's just another huge win. And I got to tell you, that was a Michaelis start where he was abominable. And I want to stay positive because the Cardinals are playing great. But think about this stat. In Fetty, Palante, and Michaelis' last 21 starts combined, they have just 1 victory. Now, that's the bad news. The good news is Sonny Gray's coming off his best start ever, and it looks like Matthew Liberatore is going to be an absolute stud. They got to get these 3 going. Fetty goes tonight, and against the Pirates, he threw a 6 innings of no-hit baseball the last time he faced them. So, I think he'll come back today. He's coming off his worst start of the season.
Yeah, but on Sonny Gray, he's got a great performance. But they gave him a whole week off, didn't they? 5 days.
Yeah, they did. And I think at 35 years old and knowing his body, and he's not like a really big guy, I think you should listen to Sonny Gray. You know, Ollie Marmol doesn't take him out of games. Sonny Gray takes himself out of games. And I know it seems crazy for old school baseball people to think about it, but it's working. The guy's been a really good pitcher in the National League for a long time.
Keep in mind also that I think Sonny Gray had a couple of extra days because he was supposed to start on a day that it got there was a rain delay, I think, and that kind of caused that. He's had to start a lot of games this year where there've been rain delays, but he's done a pretty good job through those. Talking a little bit more about Sonny Gray and how phenomenal that start was last Friday, Frank. I'm trying to think back to the last time that we saw a start like that from any St. Louis Cardinals pitcher that was that efficient and that dominant. And I mean, like I said, one pitch away from perfection. Can you think back and remember that dominant of a start in Cardinal history?
Yeah, Shelby Miller, of all people, had one of those magnificent starts. You can look it up where he was, but nobody's done it on 89 pitches. Nobody was that efficient. And ironically, the one base hit he gave up, he says, was the one time he shook off the catcher, Pedro Paez. So, yeah, it's really good. And you're only 2.5 games out, by the way. And if you could, do what you're supposed to do and beat up on the Pirates, who, by the way, did score 30 runs against the Mets and swept them this weekend. But if you do what you're supposed to do against a terrible Pirates team, I mean, you could go into Chicago almost in first place.
Switching to hockey here for a second. Bad news, or sad news, I guess I should say, for Blues fans. Alex Pietrangelo, they announced he's going to be likely out for the season. He's due to some injuries. But as a result, just breaking just a few minutes ago, Frank, Mitch Marner getting traded to Vegas, an 8-year, $12 million a year deal. What a huge blockbuster trade and signing to start off, free agency getting started tomorrow for the NHL.
Yeah, in fact, I'm glad you brought that up because by 11 o'clock tonight, we're going to know for sure whether the Blues are going to move forward with Jordan Kyrou. Because after 11 o'clock, his full no-trade clause will kick in, which makes it almost impossible for the Blues to trade him. So, look, there's a lot of smoke to this fire. I mean, he is all over every NHL trade rumor. Why? I'm not so certain. I wouldn't trade him. He scored 35 goals last year. But it's going to be between now and 11 o'clock that will determine that. And then free agency opens up at 11 today. By the way, real quick, I was at Blues development camp today. This Justin Carbonneau, their first-round pick, he's got stardom written all over it. He looks the part. He's this big, strong body, incredible goal scorer. Yeah, we'll be seeing him in a couple of years.
Well, we will not be talking to you on Friday because of the 4th of July. But as you just indicated, the Cubs and the Cardinals play again next weekend. The Pirates have won only 35 games, but they've won 3 in a row.
Just swept the Mets.
I know. Well, the Mets are a disaster, aren't they, right now? So you don't know what's going to happen. But, man, that could be an intriguing series in Chicago next weekend. But the Cardinals got to keep the gas on. And, sometimes you play, sadly, this is a cliche, to the level of your competition. And I hope that doesn't happen here the next couple of games in Pittsburgh.
Pirates are starting Andrew Heaney tonight, and he's got about an ERA in the 12s against the Cardinals in 3 starts.
I like
so
that.
They can pound him.
I like that number. All right, Cusumano, thank you. Have a great week. We'll talk to you next Monday.
Okay, sounds good, Mark.
Thanks, Frank.
Bye-bye.
Traffic from the 97.1 FM Talk Traffic Center.
Wow, there is an accident on 70, and this one is eastbound. It's before you get to Adelaide, but they've got really right now all lanes blocked. Every now and then they'll let the right lane squeeze by. Fire trucks on the scene. Again, this is eastbound 70 approaching Adelaide, and there is a jam behind it. Now, other than that, it hasn't been bad. We do have volume, though. Northbound 170 as you head for the Rock Road. Westbound 40, just moderate volume. Hampton out through McCausland, a little slow at Lindbergh, and out west at Lake St. Louis Boulevard. Now, 70 westbound is fine out of downtown. And we do have some spotty volume of moderate just traffic on southbound 270 approaching Olive through 44. At 55, slowing at Bates. Northbound 55, slowing at the 44 split. We're good on the Illinois side. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's traffic on 97.1 FM Talk.
If you are someone out there who has flooring needs, maybe you've been thinking about a flooring project, where do you get started? I think some people might be tempted to walk into a big box store and say, hey, I'm looking for flooring. Don't do that, though. Don't make that mistake. You want to go with experience. Michael's Flooring Outlet has 3 great locations in the St. Louis area, and they have a ton of experience. Mike Reynolds started in this industry and started his own business when he was 26 years old. If you'd like to reimagine your space, there's nothing better than, they say throwing a new coat of paint on the wall is going to change the look of a room. That is true. But if you put new flooring into a room, and I'm blown away by the work that Michaels did for me last fall. We did 2 rooms originally. We had some leftover products, so we did a room, or at least a portion of my basement downstairs. But we did this virtually on, emails and text strings. I didn't even go into the store. I recommend you do, only because you can see the flooring. I'm a visual guy, even though I'm an audio medium guy, because if you want flooring that is going to really fit your lifestyle, the experts at Michaels can guide you into the right products. You could be beautiful Mohawk, silky soft carpeting. It could be one of their hard flooring products, but it all depends on your lifestyle. Obviously, price is also an important factor, but they're going to take great care of you. If you need inspiration, check out Michael's Flooring Outlet. 3 great locations in the area. They're open 6 days a week, just closed on Sundays. Old Town St. Peters, Darden Prairie, and Creve Coeur on Olive. The website, igotfloor.com.
Hey, it's Mark Reardon. If you're nearing retirement or already retired, call my friends Thomas Helbig and Bob Kershaw with the Retirement Advisory Group. They'll show you how linking to the market is much safer than owning the market for your retirement savings. They're the official financial advisors of my show. Go to retirementkey.com.
If you owe the IRS, you have a legal issue, and you need the Lance Drury Law Firm. We'll protect your rights. Log on at lancedrurylaw.com or call us toll-free at 888-367-6512.
Your home sold guaranteed, or I'll buy it. Hi, I'm Gloria Liu, broker-owner at Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. And for over 20 years, I've been getting my home sellers the most money for their home and selling faster than the average agent. So when you're ready to sell your home or have questions, call me.
For years now, I've been telling you about my friend and trusted realtor, Gloria Liu, and why you should call. Hey, it's Mark Cox. Fact is, when I needed to sell my home, my only call was to Gloria Liu, and she delivered. Gloria exceeded our expectations, and that's why I strongly recommend you call, especially in this shifting market. No matter what happens, you're guaranteed to sell your home at 100% of market value, or Gloria will pay the difference. Call today. Get an upfront written guarantee and start packing. Sell with certainty and for 100% of market value, or Gloria will pay you the difference. Call 314-325-6888 or visit gloriahasthebuyers.com. That's gloriahasthebuyers.com.
Gloria and seller must agree on price and possession date.
KFTK FM Florissant from the Kaufman Townsley St. Louis's Injury Lawyers Studio. Call 314-500-5000.
That's 314-500-5000.
All on the free Odyssey app.
Learning more about the attack. I'm Lisa Lacera, Fox News. Officials in Idaho say they were familiar with Russ Rowley, the 20-year-old suspect in yesterday's deadly ambush on firefighters in Coeur d'Alene.
The Kootenai County Sheriff's Office and Coeur d'Alene Police Department, we've had 5 interactions with Rowley. And of those 5 interactions, we've had 3. Coeur d'Alene Police had 2. They're very, very minor in nature.
Kootenai County Sheriff Robert Norris, 2 firefighters were killed and 1 was wounded when authorities say Rowley deliberately set a fire to lure firefighters to the ambush. And Norris says Rowley was found dead with a gun next to him. The Senate voting on the several amendments on President Trump's so-called Big Beautiful Bill, which could lead to a final vote late tonight. But it's not clear the measure will pass.
The provision on food assistance in the bill that was put in specifically for Alaska stripped out. And we're hearing from people in the House of Representatives, conservatives, that the Senate did not make the bill any better. Conservatives, they want more deficit reduction. The Freedom Caucus put out a statement just within the past 2 hours saying that the Senate bill is not what was agreed to in the House. And I talked with Don Bacon, the Republican moderate from Nebraska. He formally announced his retirement earlier today, and he said he was concerned that the Medicare cuts were too deep. He also doesn't like some of the cuts to green energy.
Fox's Chad Pergram on Capitol Hill. If the bill passes the Senate, it heads back to the House for a vote and then on to President Trump's desk. Kilmar Abrego Garcia will stay in a Tennessee jail for now over concerns from his lawyers that he could be deported if he's released to await trial on human smuggling charges. Wall Street stocks got a boost after a Canadian official say they're rescinding a planned tax on U.S. tech firms and will resume trade talks with the U.S. The Dow added 275, the NASDAQ gained 96, the S&P plus 31. America is listening to Fox News.
Still getting around to that fix on your car? You got this. On eBay, you'll find millions of parts guaranteed to fit. Doesn't matter if it's a major engine repair or your first time swapping your windshield wipers. eBay has that part you need, ready to click perfectly into place for changes big and small. Loud or quiet, find all the parts you need at prices you'll love. Guaranteed to fit every time. But you already know that. eBay, things, people, love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Millions of Americans take medicine like Ozempic and Zepbound. Many of them are overpaying by thousands of dollars a year. These GLP-1 medications for diabetes, weight loss, and more may not always be covered by your insurance, but GoodRx can help. GoodRx helps you save every month on prescriptions at over 70,000 pharmacies nationwide. Best of all, it's free to use. Check GoodRx to save on GLP-1s. Just go to goodrx.com/GLP. That's goodrx.com/GLP. GoodRx is not insurance, but can be used instead of insurance, including Medicare and other federal and state-funded programs.
Air Comfort Service, heating, cooling, and insulation, weather.
There is a slow-moving summer cool front on the way, and it still could pop a couple of showers and thunderstorms scattered about up through about 9 or 10 o'clock tonight. It's 70 for the low, partly cloudy skies. On Tuesday, what a beautiful day. Lots of sunshine, less humid, comfortable. 87, we will feel the difference. Tuesday night, clear, 67. Wednesday, sunny and 89 degrees. This is 97.1 FM Talk. Chief Meteorologist Dave Murray.
This hour of the Mark Reardon Show is sponsored by Gamma Tree Experts. Your trees deserve the best care. Call Gamma Tree Experts. You're listening to the Mark Reardon Show on 97.1 FM Talk.
Well, I had a little bit of this at the top of the 4 o'clock hour, but it looks like the narrative in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho might be changing a little bit. Phil Holloway is going to join us in a second, but let me kind of get you up to date. You had 2 firefighters who were killed, and another had to have emergency surgery after they showed up to a fire that was allegedly, according to the sheriff out there, set by this guy they think who shot the firefighters. Here's the 911 call.
We need law enforcement up here immediately. We've got another Coeur d'Alene firefighter down. We've got 2 unresponsive battalion chiefs, gunshot wounds, multiple gunshot wounds. 2 Coeur d'Alene firefighters are down. I'm pinned down. It's clear to me that this fire was set intentionally to draw us in.
Okay, so the sheriff out there says there's no doubt what happened.
We do believe that the suspect started the fire, and we do believe that it was an ambush and it was intentional. And we do believe that he started it, and it was totally intentional.
As if, first responders don't have enough on their plate to begin with, even those in St. Louis here showing up, police officers and firefighters in certain parts of the city, they don't feel safe. I'm sure of that.
These firefighters did not have a chance.
So, but here's what's interesting. Let me welcome Phil Holloway into the mix here this afternoon. Fox News legal analyst, good friend of this show in particular. How are you, Phil? Good afternoon.
Well, I'm doing great, brother. I hope you are.
I am, but here's the confusion, and I'm just going to tell you. So I just Googled this to see if there were any updates, and this was a story that just cleared by the Associated Press, and the AP was the first person to identify who this kid was earlier today. And I don't like to mention their names, but he's a 20-year-old kid. But have you seen this update? It says this. This was at 4:44, so just about 20 minutes ago. It says a man shot firefighters battling a blaze in northern Idaho after they asked him to move his vehicle, killing 2 of them and wounding a third. That's a news story, isn't it?
Yeah, that would be much, much, much different. That seems okay. So if this most recent update is true, obviously the caller where they said, this fire was obviously set to lure us in. It seems like maybe it was just somebody with a bad attitude problem and unable to control their temper, and they didn't want to move their vehicle. Now, I guess 2 things could probably be true, and we have to wait for the investigation to run its course. But the new information always
it's confusing
is good to have, because we want to understand what happened so that we can hopefully keep it from happening again.
Right. So I'm even going to give the listeners a good example of back-to-back reports from the AP. So here's the earlier story. As a wildfire began to sow panic in a small northern Idaho mountain town, a group of firefighters who rushed to put out the blaze instead found themselves in an unexpected shootout. A man who had intentionally set the fire to ambush the crew, and I played the audio from the sheriff, he seemed to agree with that, was perched in a sniper position firing at the firefighters. They took cover behind fire trucks, but 2 died and a third was wounded during a barrage of gunfire over several hours. So then the update says a man shot firefighters battling a blaze in northern Idaho after they asked him to move his vehicle, killing 2 of them and wounding a 3rd. That's like completely different. That's not even close to being the same story.
Well, look, how many times, though, have we watched any of these, breaking news stories involving active shootings where it gets, it changes sometimes by the minute or by the hour or certainly by the day. So I'm not surprised that we're getting more details on this investigation. As a former first responder, I saw this and I'm thinking, this is a rural area. If this is one, and we heard some reports that maybe multiple snipers up there. It's like, what in the world is going on? How are you going to get enough resources up there unless you have a quick response force QRF team, from the special forces and an Apache helicopter? How are you going to neutralize this threat? Turns out it was something obviously horrible and tragic, but maybe our imaginations ran wild.
Well, but maybe, what's interesting is both of the stories included the sheriff as, the source, and the sheriff basically said.
So you did say there was a gun found, a weapon, correct?
Correct.
What kind was that?
We're not releasing that right now, just because we had to scoop everything up so quickly. We could not preserve the scene like traditionally we would like to. So we believe that there's a likelihood that when we are able to enter the scene again tomorrow without the threat of fire, that we'll find other weapons that were placed.
So we'll have to see. Maybe 2 things can be true at the same time, where they were, coming upon this guy and they were asking him to move the vehicle and he was ambushing them. I don't know. I just think that's weird that the update came out this afternoon, 20 minutes ago, very different than the narrative that's been there the entire day.
Yep. These are always fluid, dynamic, and evolving. And so it's fun to talk about them, and it's, but you got to be careful to not let your imagination get too crazy. I was having a hard time not letting my imagination run wild last night because I automatically assumed something way more sinister.
So here's another update of a story that Fred is giving to me right now, and I don't know nothing about it. This is a Fox News report saying that Brian Kohlberger has accepted a plea deal. Now, this is both related to Idaho, ironically, in the Idaho student massacre case. Have you heard anything about that?
Yes, I was hearing this just before we went on the air just now together. And so, look, this is a death penalty case, right? This has always been a death penalty case. And on the eve of trial, literally, is when plea deals tend to come to fruition. Right. If it came to fruition today, it's been in the works for a while. They've been talking about it. A lot of times, these families, look, they have been through hell. They have been through the worst imaginable hell that you can think of as family, mothers and fathers losing children that way. For them to go through this trial, they would have to relive all of this over and over again. And there is something to be said. Look, I personally think he ought to get the death penalty. If ever there was a case, this one is it. But out of respect for probably the desires and the wishes of some in the family, maybe all of them, they don't have to go through this anymore. And he's going to spend the rest of his life in a hole in a cage somewhere. So I can understand why a plea deal might be attractive to families. And believe me, the victims' families are absolutely in the works of these discussions with prosecutors. Prosecutors don't make this call just on their own. They involve the families of the victims in it. And unless there's more or less consensus that this is in the best interest of the family moving forward, this wouldn't be happening. But the reason that these things come to pass the way they do in death penalty cases is to take death off the table, and also it gives the families some small comfort in closing this horrible chapter of their lives and moving on.
I don't think there was any doubt that this guy was guilty and they had the goods on him. But one of the frustrating parts, and maybe this is just selfishly me as someone who, we all have curiosity with these cases. There's no doubt. That's why documentaries are made. And I'm sure there'll be a documentary made, for Netflix on this one as well. But the thing that's missing is why he did it. And the circumstances are still very bizarre, the nature of the crime. I mean, they have the DNA, they have the knife, or they have the sheath of the knife. So they knew that they had him, pinged in the area. He was doing a little recon. But why in the hell did he do it? And why did he do it to these people?
Well, and that's he may never reveal that. On the other hand, You can work all kinds of things into a plea deal. And while I haven't seen the terms of this one, but, it may require, and sometimes, and I've actually seen this, where it requires a defendant to fully disclose everything about the case, so that these questions can be answered. But, this is the kind of situation where you have what looks like a mass murderer, obviously, and perhaps a serial killer, right? That's just getting started in his career and makes some mistakes and gets caught right out of the gate. So criminologists and those who study these kind of things will probably be picking his brain for many years.
You would expect, though, if this is just coming together right now, that maybe we'll get some sort of news conference tomorrow where some of these things might be at least asked. I don't know about answered, but typically, the prosecutors like to wrap things up with the media, at least explain to a certain extent what's going on.
Yeah, and if there's going to be a plea deal, it's probably going to happen quick, too, because, you want to strike while the iron's hot. Presumably both sides want this deal to go through. So, they want to go ahead and put the final touches on it. It does have to be approved by the judge, but I can't imagine the judge not going along with a plea deal that involves someone serving life without parole.
I admittedly, Phil Holloway, have not followed the ins and outs, and I don't know that many of the listeners have, of the Sean Diddy Combs trial, but apparently that has gone to the jury. But even since this morning, there's been a snag in that because one of the jurors couldn't follow the judge's instructions. Can you explain what's on the line here and where this is heading?
All right, so I just posted something about this on my X feed at Phil Holloway ESQ for anybody who wants to check it out. I think, Mark, that there's a stealth juror. Okay, a stealth juror is someone who doesn't tell the truth during jury selection. They have an agenda to get on the jury. They're trying to get on the jury. Most of us try to get off jury duty. These people try to get onto the actual jury. And it may be for the purpose of convicting somebody, and it may be for the purpose of finding them, not guilty despite the evidence. They have an agenda. Maybe their agenda is publicity and books and things like that. But these are people who will not tell the truth and will find themselves on a jury. And when they get onto a jury, they can cause all kinds of trouble. Because, look, they may be back there simply arguing about things, and you have one person that says, the judge says this, and then one says, well, I remember it differently. The judge didn't say that. The judge said something else. And so it might just be one person's opinion that somebody's not following the judge. The judge can bring that person out if they've identified the juror, and I believe they have, can bring that person out in the courtroom without the other jurors and have a discussion with this juror, with the other parties present, and find out just what's going on. And if the juror comes out and convinces the judge that, no, I'm following your instructions, I'm following them as I understand them and as I believe them to be in good faith, we're just having a disagreement in the jury room. If that's all that it is, he sends them back and tells them to keep going. On the other hand, if it does look like someone is willfully not obeying the judge's instructions, you could be looking at moving an alternate into that juror's place. And then the jury deliberations have to restart all over again. But needless to say, when you have somebody who is in the jury room with an agenda, it can really muck up the works.
So they have to decide if he's guilty of 1 count of racketeering conspiracy, 2 counts of sex trafficking, 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. Now, I admitted here at the beginning that I haven't followed this very closely, but it does seem in the amount that I have followed that they have the goods on him to get a guilty verdict here. People have heard about the freak offs. There was a lot of salacious information and testimony in this case. It looks pretty bad for Diddy in this particular situation. Do you think that possibly he gets off and a jury finds him not guilty or not?
Well, I think they have a good, strong case against him, assuming the jurors are deliberating in good faith. They've got a good case against him, at least as far as the transportation of the sex workers across state lines for prostitution. That all seems pretty clear. What might not be quite so clear is, and reasonable doubt creeps in. Look, we know that there were the freak-offs and all this, but we also know through pretty good cross-examination and some other evidence and text messages, we know that these victims are, arguably, went along with a lot of this willingly, or at least there's certainly some evidence that the defense has pointed to and has argued shows that they were willing participants. So it's one of these things where, are they really victims? Were they really forced? Or was it something that they went along with because they had some particular affection for him and now they maybe regret it? So the defense was able to raise that issue. They weren't able to, I don't think, prove conclusively, but the defense doesn't have to prove anything. They just have to raise reasonable doubt, a doubt for which a reason can be attached. And if one juror buys that, then the jury can be hung on those counts. So the case against him is not open and shut on all counts, in my view.
Fox News analyst, legal analyst Phil Holloway with us this afternoon. Let's go back to Friday, a slew of Supreme Court decisions, and a lot of them obviously pretty strong. I would say, the Trump administration did pretty well on this slew of cases from this term, vindicated, if you will.
That was quite something from the Supreme Court last week. The ruling as it pertains to parental rights and education. Look, it's past time that the courts rule in favor of moms and dads, because it's moms and dads who control their kids' lives. It's who moms and dads make these decisions. Moms and dads get to make religious and educational decisions, not the schools. And for far too long, moms and dads have been told by schools that you don't count. What you want to do doesn't matter. We are in charge of your kids. So sending that message loud and clear was one of the best things that the Supreme Court could have done for parents in the United States. As to the injunctions, and I think we've talked about this before. Look, these judges, they think, okay, I've got the power of judicial review, so that must mean I can substitute my judgment for that of the president because I don't like what the president's doing with this policy. That's not how judicial review works. You have to recognize, if you're the judge, that you're not the chief executive. The only question you can answer is this policy plan, is this course of action, whatever the executive is doing that you're looking at, does that violate the Constitution in some way? Not whether or not you think it's a good idea, okay, or whether it should have been done differently. And if you look at Justice Ketanji Brown, Jackson, she thinks that it's her place to overrule the wisdom and the judgment of whoever sits in the Oval Office. The Supreme Court doesn't get to do that. That is the job of the chief executive. That's what the chief executive is elected for. If the chief executive does things that people don't like, that maybe it's bad policy, then you deal with that at the ballot box, not with the courts. Courts needed to be reined in. Thankfully, they were.
I thought Ketanji Brown Jackson's only goal was to appear on Broadway in a play. That was her main mission.
Maybe so. Because if you read any part of her dissent, it just didn't seem like something that would have been written by a learned Supreme Court justice.
Well, she doesn't, this is something that I've gone off on the last couple of years. I'm an anti-expert guy because we seem to hold Supreme Court justices in the highest regard. In many cases, maybe we should, in Clarence Thomas and certainly in Antonin Scalia of the past. But it's amazing to me, now that we get to hear more of the questions that are asked during some of these hearings, how dumb some of them are, really. Sotomayor on down the list.
Well, I mean, I'll say this. I don't know that I'm going to call them dumb, but I'll say they certainly have written some dumb things, some things that did not suggest that they were putting their best foot forward. It seems like they are not able to separate their emotions and their personal politics from their job as neutral arbiters of law and justice. Okay, that's what I see over and over and over. Out of some of these and this goes down to the district court level. I mean, some of these written opinions and these rulings are just absolutely just bizarre, absolutely bizarre. Now we see judges in district courts that, they don't necessarily want to follow Supreme Court precedent now. They try to figure out a way that, okay, this doesn't fit my agenda. I was ruling with an agenda because, I don't like the president or his policies, and now I've got this appellate ruling. I've got to figure out a way to say how this appellate ruling doesn't change things for how I want to rule. So it's just this agenda-based judicial activism that we see that's just getting into and destroying our courts from the inside out.
Phil Holloway, always great to have you on. You know how much I love you. Thank you so much. You have a great 4th of July.
You too, brother.
All
Anytime.
right, take care. I heard the former governor of Texas, former energy secretary, Rick Perry, talk about something really interesting and sort of out of left field for me about a particular drug earlier today on Fox. I'm going to have that details coming up.
Traffic from the 97.1 FM Talk Traffic Center.
We've got an accident on eastbound 70 approaching Adelaide, really close to Cary, and it's been blocking the 2 left lanes, and we've really got a jam behind it. Now, that's the worst of it. We look fine if you're headed into Illinois on the bridges downtown. We've got a little bit of volume northbound 170 between the Rock Road and 70. Southbound a little slow at 64. But westbound 64, just moderate volume Hampton through McCausland. Eastbound slowing at just 170. And then 64 out west, a moderate volume N out through the 70 split. 70 is slowing at Wentzville. And there is a moderate volume on southbound 270 from Page down through Doherty Ferry. This report brought to you by Point with an E Pest Control. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's traffic on 97.1 FM Talk.
Point Pest Control is reminding you it's time to spray for mosquitoes. How can something that tiny interrupt your outside gatherings? Have Point Pest Control spray today so your next outside gathering is mosquito-free. 636-798-0023. Mention Annie to save an additional 10%. PointPestControl.com.
Wait, if I work today, why should I have to wait 2 weeks to get my money? With Earnin, you can access your pay as you work instead of waiting days and weeks for a paycheck. Get up to $150 a day with a max of $750 between paydays. No interest, no credit checks, and no mandatory fees. Because, hey, it's your money. Download the Earnin app now to get it and join millions of people making any day payday. That's EARNIN. Earnin is not a bank. Access limits are based on your earnings and risk factors. Available in select states. Expedited transfers available for a fee. Terms and restrictions apply. Visit earnin.com for full details.
Lifestyles Unlimited member Chad on the life-changing rewards of real estate investing.
Whenever you have residents coming in thanking you for taking what was dull and drab and turning it around, making their lives better, that's definitely a blessing.
Become a life changer today with Lifestyles Unlimited. Text the word radio to 88007. That's radio to 88007. Join for just $297. A 60% off savings. Lifestyles Unlimited. Text radio to 88007.
Rolling hot dogs 2 for $5 on a fluffy bun. All beef hot dogs rolling in. Hurry, cause they're on the run. Pick your toppings anyway. Roll into this deal. Pick your 2, big Q2. Roll and mix a meal. Mustard relish, sauerkraut. Ain't no need to scream and shout. Get 2 all beef hot dogs and a big Q for $5. Only at QT. More than a gas station.
Hi, this is Steve Butts with the Crawford Butts Insurance Agency. I know we're all experiencing sticker shock when you get your insurance premium. Now more than ever, you need an independent insurance agent to find the best value for your family's insurance needs. Crawford Butts, family owned and operated for more than 60 years. Please give us a call at 314-752-2500 or at crawfordbutts.com.
You've been listening to the very popular Wellness One for many years, Saturdays and Sundays on 97.1 FM Talk. We're happy to share that we've expanded the show to 4 times a week. Yes, 4 times every weekend. Saturday at 10 a.m., Saturday at 8 p.m., Sunday at 9 a.m., and Sunday at 2 p.m. It's the same great show designed to cut through the nonsense and provide you a common sense, science-based strategy for a healthy life. So join TJ and Aaron for Wellness One. Now 4 times a week on 97.1 FM Talk.
Better pull up me, but the broken dreams have got
A little controversy for your afternoon. The Mark Reardon Show.
Hey, Tim Fitch is coming up, former chief of police for St. Louis County. You know, we talked about this, Sue, on the roundtable of the police commission that was appointed a week ago today by Governor Kehoe. And I threw some red flags on the makeup of that. And I even invoked Chief Fitch's name. I said, why not? Now, he's not in the city, but why not someone like that, a former law enforcement guy? I guess maybe the progressives would throw a red flag on that at the Board of Aldermen. But I thought it would be good to get his insight on that particular process. And he's coming up here. So I'm driving in today to the station, and I hear Rick Perry, the former governor of Texas and the former energy secretary. He has not really been in the limelight for a long time, talking about something fascinating that I was not aware of. It was not on my radar. The guest segment on Fox was inspired by an op-ed that he wrote, and I missed this last week, in the Washington Post. And in that piece, he said this: I've spent most of my adult life in public service as governor of Texas, as U.S. Secretary of Energy, and a proud veteran. And a few things have moved me like what I've witnessed with a psychedelic, few things have moved me like what I've witnessed with a psychedelic drug made from a shrub in Africa. So hear me out on this, because this is really interesting. He says, this month, Texas became the first state in the nation to allocate public funding for an FDA-approved clinical trial of ibogaine. It's spelled Ibogaine, committing $50 million, the largest psychedelic research investment ever made by a government. It's a bold bipartisan move rooted in science and urgency. Ibogaine, he wrote, is a naturally occurring plant medicine derived from a shrub native to Gabon and surrounding countries in West Africa. It is quite literally a plant root, yet it is changing the way we think about healing trauma, substance abuse disorder, and brain injury, even anxiety and things like that. He says clinical data shows that ibogaine has the potential to interrupt substance dependence, reduce trauma symptoms, and promote neurological repair. And he says he first heard about this from Morgan Luttrell. Morgan Luttrell's brother. Do you ever see the movie Lone Survivor?
No.
Well, that was about his brother. It's a great story. It's an amazing movie. He was a Navy SEAL. But he said this. He says that, and he's a member, Marcus is a member of, Morgan is a member of Congress right now. He's a former SEAL. He says, he admitted this. He goes, because I can see the look on your face, right? Psychedelic drug, helping people combat PTSD, et cetera. What does that mean? You know, most often you hear about psilocybin, mushrooms. And in some states in this country, they've tried to make, like I think out in the Pacific Northwest in Washington State, in Oregon, they've allowed use of psilocybin in microdoses to help people. So Rick Perry says, when he told me about it, I cautioned him. Like many people, I thought I knew what psychedelics were, that they were dangerous, something to stay far away from. I grew up, he says, in the Nixon era, where the message was clear: drugs are bad, psychedelics will ruin your life, and the only responsible path is total avoidance. But I've come to realize how wrong that narrative was. That fear-based messaging kept us from exploring treatments that could have saved countless lives. So he talks about how Morgan went to Mexico for ibogaine treatment, because this is what's happened. People are going down to Mexico. He comes home less than a week later. He was clear. He was calm. He was centered in a way that Rick Perry says he had never seen him before. He had found a path forward from the psychological wounds he had been dealing with for years. Then I watched his twin brother, Marcus, also a Navy SEAL and a hero that so many Americans know from the book and movie Lone Survivor, go through the same experience. And here's what he said on Fox earlier today on this topic.
Well, Texas has a huge veteran population, as they do active duty military as well. Mm-hmm. And my relationship with them goes back decades, literally. As you'll recall, Marcus Luttrell lived with my wife and myself from 2007 through 2009. He was very deeply affected by the wounds of war, traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress, as was his twin brother, Morgan, who is now a United States Congressman. Morgan worked with me at the Department of Energy. And that's when I first heard of this compound being used in Mexico by our veterans who were going down and being treated. So that's a quick synopsis of the personal effect that these two young men and others that I'd talked to.
So he tells the story. He says, look, he had never really heard about this before. He explained how thousands of veterans have traveled to Mexico outside of the country to access the treatment because they can't get it here. He indicated that small studies and firsthand reports suggests that ibogaine might hold promise for a range of things, including Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, MS, anxiety. The list goes on.
I've been to the facilities in Mexico. I've studied this deeply. I've looked at the Stanford trial that Nolan Williams and the Stanford University, and it's without a doubt, in my opinion, this is a Schedule I drug, but it was swept up along with a lot of other compounds back in the late 60s, 70s, never to be touched and used. And we are seeing now that this can, in fact, with one treatment.
You know what? That's the most interesting part. It works differently than a lot of other drugs. And this is one of the things that's happened with opioid addicts. In many cases, he says it requires just one single treatment to interrupt years, sometimes decades of devastating dependence. It involves taking an ibogaine capsule under medical supervision, followed by an hours-long, intensely introspective journey. It appears to reset the brain, allowing people to step out of the cycle of addiction without the painful withdrawal and constant maintenance that define most options. I think it's fascinating. He's now working with this group now. He kind of, I think, was partially a founder. And I want to find out more. I'm going to try to get Rick Perry on the show because I thought it was so interesting. It's different, obviously, but the state of Texas leading the way on that.
Traffic from the 97.1 FM Talk Traffic Center.
We do have a couple of accidents out there tonight. There is one eastbound 70 approaching Adelaide, and this thing has been blocking the two left lanes, and it's got a jam behind it. There was an accident northbound 170 near 70 that caused a delay in that area. The latest to be reported is a stall southbound 55 approaching Merrimack Bottom Road. Watch for that one on the right-hand side. Now, we do have a little bit of volume out west, but it's not bad. 70 westbound from Highway A through Wentzville, and 64 just a little slow at Highway N. Headed into Illinois, things look great. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's traffic on 97.1 FM Talk.
This report is sponsored by Overhead Door Company of St. Louis.
Cash for Clunkers is back. Overhead Door Company of St. Louis is paying cash for your clunkers now. Schedule online at overheaddoorsstlouis.com or call 314-781-5200. It's cash for clunkers now at Overhead Door Company of St. Louis.
If you're considering an annuity as part of your retirement plan, we need to talk. Hi, I'm Bob Stockdale, Senior Vice President Investments with the ClearPath Wealth Management Group at Stifel and host of On the Money Saturday mornings at 11 on 97.1 FM Talk. Annuities can be a useful tool for some retirement investors, but not all annuities are created equal. Every week, we meet clients who own complex annuities that don't suit their needs and, in some cases, actively undermine their retirement plan. Before you purchase an annuity, get a second opinion from the ClearPath Wealth Management Group at Stifel. Requesting a consultation is free of charge. To request a free consultation, contact us at clearpathinvesting.com. That's clearpathinvesting.com, or call us at 636-695-2650. That's clearpathinvesting.com or 636-695-2650. Stifel Nicholas and Company Incorporated, member NYSE and SIPC.
Getting a new roof is serious business, and you want to make sure you're working with someone you can trust. Mark Cox here for Correll Roofing Company. My friend Curtis Correll is a lifetime St. Louisan. He's a local business owner, and he's running crews with over 20 years of experience. When Curtis gets on your roof, you can trust him to be honest with you about whether you need a new roof or not. He will work out all of the details with your insurance company and make sure you're getting the right roof for your home. He tells me he doesn't overcommit. So when other roofing companies do that, quality suffers, customer service can drop off. At Correll Roofing, they pay attention to details. They have quality materials and workmanship, and they use quality roofs that are built to last. That's what you want. They can also help you out with luxury line roofing like metal roofs and architectural shingles. Call 314-222-9529. That's 222-9529, or Correll Roofing Co. on Facebook.
It's time for a $98 AC tune-up.
And this portion of the show at 5:36, sponsored by Jerry Kelly Heating and Air. Well, if you caught the beginning of the show with Phil Holloway, the narrative on this story in Idaho is changing just a little bit. Here's the harrowing 911 call, though. Firefighters show up for this brush fire, and then they just start getting hit by gunfire.
We need law enforcement up here immediately. We've got another Coeur d'Alene firefighter down. We've got 2 unresponsive battalion chiefs, gunshot wounds, multiple gunshot wounds. 2 Coeur d'Alene firefighters are down. I'm pinned down. It's clear to me that this fire was set intentionally to draw us in.
What's interesting about that story right now is, and again, I don't like to name the kid. The kid's 20 years old. Here's a story from the BBC with the headline, Idaho ambush suspect wanted to be a firefighter. The NBC story from 2 hours ago says suspect identified at the Idaho fire shooting. So every once in a while, when I'm doing this live on the air, I like to check to see if there's new information, for example, on the big, beautiful bill. And the latest story makes no sense whatsoever. It's from the Associated Press, which is an outlet that sometimes can't be trusted. And it says a man who set a wildfire and then fatally shot 2 firefighters and wounded another in northern Idaho was a 20-year-old transient who attacked the first responders after they asked him to move his vehicle. So the narrative changing just a little bit. I did not bring former St. Louis County Police Chief Tim Fitch, former St. Louis County Councilman, on the air to talk about specifically this. But I don't know if you've tracked that story here in the last few hours, but it's a little weird the way the narrative might be changing.
That's not unusual in a fresh news story. Hi, Mark. Thanks for the invitation. I will tell you that this reminds me a lot of, do you remember the Maplewood firefighter, Ryan Hummert, that was shot and killed in an ambush fire in 2008 off of Big Bend?
I do not remember that. No.
Oh, yeah. 22-year-old firefighter from Maplewood, Ryan Hummert, Rockwood Summit graduate. He was the first firefighter on the scene to a car fire. And then the homeowner that had set his own car on fire immediately started shooting. He was shot and killed. 2 Maplewood police officers were shot and survived. This reminds me a lot of that, where it was clearly an ambush. You draw them in. And, certainly firefighters, police officers are more apt to think about, it could be an ambush, those type of things. But firefighters aren't. They're there to put out a fire.
Right.
And that's what it sounds like this person did in Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah, I mean, my first thoughts was, I said this earlier, could you even imagine being in a situation as a firefighter? You're just trying to do your job, and then you have to face something like this. Now, I know cops have to deal with this all the time, but you would anticipate, I don't think firefighters, carry weapons to fire back. That's one significant difference.
Yeah, exactly. And in urban areas like even St. Louis, many of the firefighters and paramedics wear bulletproof vests because of the nature of the calls they're going to and the neighborhoods they're going to. Many of the gunshot victims, they come back for retaliation. And yeah, so they I don't know if all of them are wearing bulletproof vests, but I know firefighters in the city, specifically EMS, that do wear bulletproof vests.
So I invoked your name on the Reardon Roundtable. You're a veteran of the Roundtable. You were not on last Friday, but I mentioned you because we were talking about the appointments by Governor Kehoe to the new police commission. Mayor Kara Spencer will be a full voting member. He names Brad Arteaga, Don Brown, Sonia Jenkins-Gray, Edward McVeigh, Chris Saraceno. So all very successful business owners in the city. But I said something like, man, wouldn't it be nice to have someone like a Tim Fitch type on that commission? Now, maybe my instincts were wrong because in a situation like this, you want people independent from law enforcement. But I was very curious about your take on the governor's appointments. He came on my show on Tuesday. He defended them. Jane commented on Friday. She said the rank and file responded pretty well to these appointments. But I'm really curious to hear what you thought about all this.
Well, some people are like, we should remove politics from, selections like this. There's no way. I was downtown earlier today. I was in Clayton today. Both times I saw people I knew, multiple people I knew. This is St. Louis. It's going to be people you know and that you've heard of. And I will tell you that I have no problem with any of these individuals the governor selected. Let's give them a chance. Let's see what happens. Let's see how they do. But as far as former police officer, former law enforcement, here's one thing I guarantee you. This governor is very close with the police community in the city of St. Louis and the region. And I will guarantee you they had input on these individuals. And if any of those police labor union leaders had problems with any of these individuals, my guess is the governor would not have selected them. So, my feeling is that this is about as good as you're going to get as far as a pro-police crowd of appointees. But they also have a job to do, and you have to be able to, if you have to drop the hammer and say, this police officer needs to be disciplined or fired or whatever, I am sure I know most of these individuals pretty well. I'm sure they would do that if they absolutely have to. But short of that, I think what you're going to see is a very supportive police board in the city of St. Louis, and that's been sorely needed in the city.
You know, they have the ability to change policy, is my understanding as well. But what good is any policy change going to do unless you get more cops on the streets? And that seems to be a challenge. And you have another election tomorrow in one aldermanic seat, and it looks like it might go to another Megan Green type progressive. So when you have a board of aldermen that's really not on the side of police, and you got a mayoral candidate in New York City who's a defund the police guy, and here we go again, how do you make any changes?
Well, you just described exactly why the governor and the legislature did what they did. They felt like they had to go around some of those anti-police far left progressives, and that's exactly what they did by appointing those police boards. They went around them. So I think as long as the police officers know that if they follow the law and they follow their policy and they follow their training, this police board is going to have their back. I think that's pretty clear. So I think they could still do their job, even though you have some of these far left progressives, because they're not reporting to these far left progressives. And remember how the budget worked out in this new state control bill. You know, they have to provide, I don't remember the exact number, percentage of budget for the police department, whether they like to or not. They have to do that.
So do you have a relationship with Chief Tracy by any chance or not? I can never remember.
Oh, I've talked to him many times, but as far as, you know, it's just professional.
But it seems like, well, then I can ask this question. Do you have confidence that he's the guy to kind of guide us through this right now? The governor seems to have some confidence in Chief Tracy. I've seen an unwillingness for him to take a stand and say, look, we need officers. We need these things to be changed, to have a more forceful attitude. Now, words are words and action is action, but I've never been left inspired by this is the guy that's going to turn things around here in St. Louis. Now, not one person can do it, Chief. I get that. But give me some confidence that he's the guy that can at least play a role in this.
Well, I want you to think about it this way. He's no longer working for Tashara Jones.
No, that's right.
Or one particular person. That can completely flip how a police chief does their job when they're working for a group of individuals who will support their decisions and support the officers when they get it right. And that's a whole different situation than working at the pleasure of Mayor Tashara Jones.
Well, that's true. So, but that's the only hope I can get from right now, right? Because this is such a complicated thing. I feel like you and I have known each other for a long time. I talked about this on the roundtable. We talk about the same things every Friday. We need more cops on the street. We have this breaking out in downtown. We can't keep doing this. And now, I don't know if you saw the story from last week on the population, and what hope can you offer that we can build St. Louis and move it in a better direction with population, with enterprise, with entrepreneurship, all the things that are needed to make a city successful?
I am more positive about the city of St. Louis than I've been in a long time because of some of the changes the state has enacted, particularly this police board. I think you're going to see some changes. It's not going to be overnight. But you're already starting to see police departments around the country start to recover as far as staffing goes. I don't think the St. Louis police departments can be any different. I think they're going to start recovering.
Well, I hope you're right about that. Anything you want to say about that mayoral candidate in New York I referenced? Good Lord, how about that guy?
Well, what I could say is if he ends up being the mayor, they get what they paid for. Let them spiral down until they crash and burn. That's what had to happen in Detroit. I think we've talked about Detroit before.
You've mentioned that before.
Yeah. And they are coming back. Sometimes you just have to let that happen.
You might be right about that. Chief, always great to have you on. We'll see you on the roundtable soon.
All right, take care.
All right, take care. Audio cut of the day is coming up next.
Traffic from the 97.1 FM Talk Traffic Center.
Not a bad commute tonight. If you are just headed out, this holiday week has light traffic, and we look good. Now, westbound 70 is in good shape, a little slow at Wentzville, and that's it. 6440, just some volume out at Lake St. Louis Boulevard. Southbound 270, moderate volume at Ladue Road, and that's about it. If you are headed into Illinois, No delays at this hour. I'm Sue Thomas, and that's traffic on 97.1 FM Talk.
We will feature some of the New York mayoral candidate, whether or not he's going to win or not, in Audio Cut of the Day coming up here in just a couple of minutes. Let's talk about the Missouri Athletic Club. I love what they have to offer. You can go down and have an adult beverage or grab a meal downtown before you go to a game, and a shuttle can take you to the game. I well documented my racquetball player lack of skills in racquetball at the West location, but we also do something, and really I'd say a lot for the community. This is the mission of the Sports Foundation that the MAC has, is to recognize achievements in the field of athletics and connection there. And they also have something called the Charitable Society for Children. And that's kind of an extension of the Sports Foundation. We pick 3 charities every year. I want to focus on one of them right now. It's Kids Smart Tools for Learning. The other 2 are Books for STL Kids. Butterfly Kisses Alliance is for pregnancy and infant loss support. But Kids Smart is a great organization here. The mission is to empower kids in the need to succeed in school. We talked about this with one of my guests earlier this afternoon, Sarah Parshall Perry, who's awesome. The school, teachers are awesome. I never want to rip on the teachers, but the leadership is another issue. And you have kids that are falling behind. In St. Louis alone, you have 90,000 kids who can't afford basic school supplies. So Kids Smart comes in with equipping, with free school supplies every week. They play a role in increasing self-esteem for students with access to quality school supplies. They have really spent $78 million in school supplies distributed throughout the area. And everything that the MAC does kind of goes hand in hand with that and with the other charities. By the way, we're already accepting nominations for next year's charities as well. And you can always find out more on the MAC website at mac-stl.org today.
Ready for instant curb appeal that comes with a 25-year transferable warranty? Call Rhino Shield today. We do brick, block, stucco, asbestos, aluminum, steel, cedar, and more. Over the past 20 years, we've done thousands of homes, businesses, churches, schools, condos, parking garages, large metal buildings, and strip malls, from Champaign to the Lake of the Ozarks. We do flat and sloped metal roofs to extend their lives too. Proud to be veteran-owned and manufactured in the good old USA, so we're tariff-free. We're exceeding expectations every day. Evaluations are free. A+ rated with the BBB and a lot of 5-star Google reviews. Call 877-25-RHINO, 877-25-RHINO, or 877-25rhino.com. See what we did there? Genius. Tell them, ladies.
Don't paint, don't Rhino, go Rhino Shield. Never paint your house again. Rhino Shield.
The only eggs with more fresh and delicious taste, plus superior nutrition. Available in so many delicious varieties. Classic, cage-free, organic, free-range, and pasture-raised. Eggland's best. Better taste, better nutrition, better eggs.
The Mark Cox Morning Show.
Hey, it's Kim in for Mark. If you live in Illinois or you pass through there, prepare to pay more at the gas pump starting Tuesday. At 8:20, the Illinois Policy Institute on the impact this will have on drivers.
The Mark Cox Morning Show. Weekdays from 5 to 9. You're listening to The Mark Reardon Show on 97.1 FM Talk.
So wasn't it last week on Sue's News you mentioned Stranger Things finally coming out?
Yeah, it might have been before that, but yes.
So it's going to come out, as I remember you describing it, I think several episodes right around Thanksgiving, and then the final episodes around Christmas or New Year's, which we're looking forward to. So I discovered, I'm going to do this tomorrow at 4:04. I had it on the list for today, and then I told my washing machine going awry story. And
Yes.
I learned from Sue that the whole problem that I have, if you missed that story, is that I have a side loader, and you never have issues with the top loaders.
Well, that's not true, but not that one I haven't had yet.
Well, this one, I'll just recount the story real quickly, because there's a little message that comes up on the electronics that says SUD. And I Googled that, and what it indicates is there's too much soap that's in the deal at the same time. And I'm like, well, that's kind of weird. But what was happening is there's this filter on my Samsung, and it's at the bottom of the machine. And I know, because I've been in this house now for 8 years, that I have to, and now I need to do it probably monthly, and I only do it like once or twice a year, pop that thing open, unscrew the little filter. When I unscrew it, I always have water that leaks out. And I was prepared for that. So I had one towel, right? I needed literally like 10 towels. It was everywhere. The water started gushing out. And the reason is because there was all this gunk in there. And there was a couple of pieces of plastic or something like that that clearly was something that we accidentally washed in the machine. But it was a little crazy. But I bring it up because I was going to tell you this Stranger Things tie-in story, and I'll wait for tomorrow. I just sent Fred I sent Fred a message because Fred doesn't watch it. If you watch it, I think you might find it interesting. It's about one of the characters, and it involves music. That's all I will say. But that's coming up tomorrow on the show. I got a couple of things here to do for audio cut of the day, so let's get right to that.
Stand by. Playback ready.
Now, the audio cut of the day.
Yeah, coming full circle on the beginning of the show, I have no idea what's going to happen with this. It seems like the brightest and sharpest minds, as I'm looking at the Senate right now with the wrangling that keeps going on, all this stuff behind the scenes, they're voting on amendments, they're working backdoor deals. They got to get it to the House in order for the House to pass it and get to President Trump's desk, right? I don't know that they can do that. Even President Trump, when asked about that by Maria Bartiromo, said he's maybe a little bit more flexible than he had been on the 4th of July deadline because he just wants to get it passed. But they're working on this in the Senate. It looks like Josh Hawley, despite all his TV ads and his concerns about Medicaid, it looks like he's going to vote for it. It doesn't look like Rand Paul or Senator Tillis is going to vote for the final product. We'll see. I'd like to see Fetterman vote for it, see if we get one Democrat. Jason Smith is a key component of this. He is the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee. He represents a good portion of Southeast Missouri, and he has been shepherding this through. He was on with Trey Gowdy on Fox last night. What happens next?
As long as the Senate continues balance over the next 24 hours and help fix some of the flaws that's in the bill right now that we have pointed out that could be toxic pills to some of our members, if they do that within the next 24 hours, it'll come back to the House, and the House would then accept the Senate changes to the original House bill, vote on it, and then send it directly to the president's desk. If the Senate makes substantial changes that requires a conference, that's going to take a little bit longer. But we're hopeful that they'll be able to pass something that we can pick up, pass, send directly to the president's desk, because it'd be a great welcome to the 250th anniversary of our great nation to give everyone a tax cut and to make sure that they have the largest spending cut in U.S. history and also the largest investment in border security and creating the Golden Dome for American security. Great things for Americans to celebrate on July 4th.
Okay, I agree with him on all that. There's a lot of good things in these things, but there's a lot of things that are questionable as well. When it gets kicked back to the House with the changes in the Senate, how do you keep the votes there?
It's all about balance. For almost 2 years, we've been working on the tax-specific aspect of this bill with the entire Republican conference, trying to figure out how we should thread the needle and to balance. We were able to pass it originally just by one vote, 215 to 214 out of the House. It's going to be very close this time, but we're going to get the job done. That's why balance is crucial, whether it's SALT, whether it's the green credits, whether it's Medicaid reforms. It all has to be balanced, and we're going to deliver that.
Well, we'll see what happens. President Trump is certainly keeping his fingers crossed.
It's very important. If we don't have it, there's a 68% tax increase. We're cutting 1.7. Let's see, we're cutting, 1.7 trillion. Think of it. I think I just saw the number a little while ago, $1.7 trillion. But we can grow our country so much more than that. And what I want to do is do it through growth. We're going to have growth like we've never seen before.
Well, we're going to know a lot more by the time the show starts tomorrow at 3. Sue, have a great night.
You too.
We'll see you then.
If you missed anything, podcast The Mark Reardon Show at 971talk.com.